What you're viewing is recognized as the most densely populated location to have ever existed. It spans just 6.4 acres, which is equivalent to 13 Starbucks coffee shops located in the Empire State Building. And while a huge coffee shop like this one can host, say, 1,000 guests, this place somehow managed to have around 33,000 people squeezed in. Some estimates suggest that the actual number could have soared to 50,000 at some point. This is Kowloon walled city. The city is relatively young, settled in 1898, but its history goes back nearly 1,000 years to the Song dynasty. Originally a modest fortification, it remained largely unchanged until renovations in 1847 added defensive walls, leading to its revival a half-century later. But back then, the area was sparsely populated rather than crowded. To really understand just how packed this area got by the mid-20th century, let's compare it to some others. Take the East Village in New York City, for example. It has a little park at its center, but mostly it's filled with a mix of historic homes and newer apartment buildings. As of 2010, it was home to over 44,000 people, making it way more crowded than the rest of New York City, which is saying a lot, since New York City is the most densely populated city in the US. By most standards, it's pretty busy. But then you look at Kowloon walled city, and it's a whole different ballgame. If all the land there could be split proportionally between the residents, that would be somewhere around 5.5 to 8.5 square feet per person, if we count land only, while science claims people need 200 to 400 square feet at home just to feel good. So, why was everything crammed together like that? Well, it comes down to Kowloon walled city's unique status. It was never officially part of the rest of Hong Kong. What started as a small Chinese military outpost became more significant when a larger fort was built nearby, coinciding with the rise of Canton Harbor. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, this site transformed into a tourist destination, eventually becoming home to around 400 squatters. However, in the 1930s, the Hong Kong authorities intervened, relocating the inhabitants and demolishing the dilapidated structures. The 1940s and 50s were pretty rough times for folks in Kowloon. And while the residents were somewhat accustomed to different countries vying for control over their land, they were definitely caught off guard by natural disasters. In January 1950, a massive fire broke out that wiped over 2,500 huts, leaving almost 3,500 families, which is about 17,000 people without homes. This disaster really underscored the need for better fire safety measures, especially in the squatter areas made mainly of wood. The problem didn't end there. Due to the lack of control from both the Chinese and British authorities, except for a handful of operations conducted by the Hong Kong police, the walled city became a refuge for illegal activities. It was not until a trial in 1959, which took place within the walled city's boundaries, that the Hong Kong government was officially recognized as having jurisdiction there. By that time, however, organized crime groups known as triads had already established dominance over the area. Starting in the 1950s, triad factions such as the 14K and Sun Yi-un took control of all the criminal dens within the walled city. The environment became so dangerous that police would only enter in large numbers. It wasn't until 1973 and 1974 when over 3,500 police operations led to more than 2,500 arrests and the confiscation of illegal produce that the influence of the triads began to diminish. Only a decade later, the local police chief announced that the crime rate in the walled city was now under control. And even though crime dropped, the walled city still became known for having a surprising number of unlicensed doctors and dentists who could work there without fear of getting into trouble. That was a win-win. Many working-class people couldn't afford licensed dentists somewhere in Hong Kong, so they would go to Kowloon to receive affordable health care. You get it now. What can attract people in such a seedy place? Right, it's zero oversight. And zero oversight means that anyone could start their business here, no matter how shady it was. However, there were some totally normal entrepreneurs. For example, noodle makers. Despite all the dangers, the population of the city kept growing. But how can you create more houses if your territory is very limited? Simple. Think vertically, not horizontally. So, local developers started stacking more and more stories, as if those were Lego bricks you could easily add on top of your tower. This led to a crazy population boom, making the city feel like a little world of its own, with over 33,000 people being crammed into 300 buildings on just about 7 acres. By the late 70s and early 80s, the city hit its peak size. But that came with some quirks. However, there were limits on how tall buildings could go. Those could not exceed 13 to 14 stories, and it was because of planes flying into Kai Tak Airport. Yeah, living close to the airport meant residents had to deal with a lot of noise. Water was provided through 8 municipal pipes, although there were options for wells too. Some streets barely saw any natural light thanks to the way buildings were packed in, and fluorescent lights were the go-to for illumination down below. It was nighttime all the time in there. So, the city buildings were pretty tall, yet the city had merely 2 elevators for its entirety. At the base of various skyscrapers, both shared and private mailboxes were affixed to the walls. Frequently, this left the postman with no choice but to ascend on foot. Even several floors high, the tangled network of paths persisted. Intricate passages that wound their way into the city's core through a web of bridges and staircases. But let's say you live in such a place and want to have a walk or just a bit of fresh air. What do? In such cramped conditions, rooftops will serve you 1,000 purposes. They can be a space for physical activities and a kid's playground, but they can also be used as venues for pigeon racing, with residents making their guess concerning which pigeon comes first. And it's illegal for sure. Such rooftops can pose certain risks because of the narrow spaces between the buildings. But locals use them also as landfills. The absence of efficient garbage collection led to some residents to transport their larger waste items up to the roof. Consequently, many rooftops became crowded with abandoned mattresses, damaged furniture, and appliances. Hey, I get the feeling that I'm talking about something that actually exists. Sorry for that, I totally forgot to mention the most important thing. This city ceased its existence back in the 1990s. What happened? Long story short, both Chinese and British authorities grew increasingly weary of the chaos unfolding in the city. Control was difficult, if not impossible. Criminals kept proliferating and the area was in disarray. Consequently, officials from both countries chipped in and allocated approximately $350 million in compensation for the locals, who had been kicked out of that area as the city was demolished. Kowloon exists today, but not as the infamous walled city. It's now an urban area in Hong Kong, which is located in a completely different place. It just has the same name. As for the area that used to be Kowloon, there's now a park known as Kowloon Walled City Park. Architects and thinkers still look back at Kowloon as a prime example of the organic megastructure concept from the 60s, which envisions cities as flexible networks that grow and change with their residents. Almost forgot. If you're looking to catch a glimpse of the real deal, you should watch Crime Story, starring Jackie Chan, as some scenes were filmed there.
Wow, looky here. It's New York City, the Big Apple, the city that never sleeps. Hong Kong on the Hudson, the greatest city in the world. New York, New York, the city so nice they named it twice. Alright, I'll stop. You thought you knew this city so well, but underneath all that glitz and glamour is a facade, literally. New York is populated with some of the most iconic urban buildings in the world and home to some of the most unique and famous towers. Who would have known that New York was a front for fake buildings? And the cool thing is that there are plenty to search for. Okay, I'm adding that to my bucket list. So the question is, why do they put these fake buildings all over New York? The city is one of the most vibrant places in the world and requires many infrastructures to keep the city in motion. That means having many industrial structures and buildings in every major district. New York is charming for the design and the buildings. Imagine having industrial structures right next to your favorite pizza parlor or hot dog stand. The designers thought ahead and decided to disguise those industrial infrastructures as fake buildings. They blend with the city so well that they don't stand out. They look like your good old apartment or housing unit with a front door, real-life windows, and even charming balconies where people would hang out. The only thing is that there's nothing behind the facade and no one is allowed inside. So, where in the world can you find these fake buildings? For starters, one of the most popular fake buildings is in Brooklyn. At 58 Joralemon Street, you can find a very typical neighborhood. But between the buildings stands a brick building with a slightly deeper shade than the rest. It has bright open windows that blend in with the rest of the buildings in the neighborhood, except that they're blacked out. At first glance, you might not think of it as anything, but if you pay close attention, the building looks like a glitch from a video game. It was built in 1847, way before New York was considered glamorous. Originally, it was meant to be a regular building, but in 1908, they converted it into a fake building. Don't think you can just try to break in. Even if you could, it's pointless, because it's part of a ventilation fan for the subway. It also serves as an emergency exit for some of the surrounding buildings. Actually, throughout New York, many fake buildings exist to disguise the subway vents for the smoke to escape. All the way to 415 Bruckner Boulevard, the Bronx, this townhouse was designed by the Switzer Group, which is an interior architect company. It's not as charming as the one at 58 Joralemon Street, but it serves a similar purpose: to hide an electric substation for New York's utility company. The city needs these substations to reduce the high-voltage electricity to a lower voltage so it can be distributed locally. Having a building like this popping out of the middle of your neighborhood isn't exactly the smartest way to attract people to the Bronx. That's why the fake townhouse facade is the perfect camouflage. Now, some of these fake buildings don't really hit the mark and stick out like a sore thumb. The people of Manhattan describe the Mulberry Square infrastructure as a complete clunker. After plenty of redesigns and back to the drawing board meetings, the result is still not pretty. The locals compare it to a concrete box. They created windows without glass, which doesn't allow the building to blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. But it beats a typical subway ventilation plant either way. There are just so many places to visit and cross off your bucket list. But if you live in China, you can literally stay in the country and visit many iconic cities around the world. The replica cities began when the Chinese economy started booming in the early 90s. They wanted the lifestyle of the rich and famous without wanting to leave their country. They can be comfortable eating their local food and get the feeling of being abroad. The Chinese province of Guangdong has an identical copy of the historical Australian alpine village Hallstatt. The real Hallstatt is centuries old and one of the most charming places to discover. The local people of Hallstatt also had no idea that their home was being built in China. Some people thought that this was controversial, probably because it cost around $940 million to build it. Paris is undoubtedly one of the most charming cities you could ever visit. Its rich history and vibrant culture are enough to catch the first plane to go there. For residents of Tianducheng, that's something they can do anytime they want. The city is also known as Sky City, and has a replica of the Eiffel Tower that looks eerily like the iconic one in Paris, and built buildings to match the city's visual charm. One of the main things that will break the charm is the farmland surrounding the city. There's barely anyone there, and the streets are always empty, very un-Paris-like. Still, you can find some nice fountains and statues scattered along the streets to give it some spirit. There's laundry hung everywhere, even on the trees. The picturesque fountains are dry and many apartments are empty. Only a few stores are open for business. Even though this looks like a fake city, it's quite real. Some people live here because it's more affordable than other places. 2 hours away from this town is another version of Paris's Pont Alexandre III and a carbon copy of London's Tower Bridge, but with 4 towers instead of 2. Hey, such a bargain! You can also visit the closest thing to Italy, but this time you can go shopping. Florentia Village is an outlet mall that offers an array of shops to lose yourself. The good thing is that this was built by an Italian developer to capture the essence of an Italian village. It has fountains, canals, and mosaics for proper aesthetics. It began in 2011 and has more than 200 shops with many Italian brands and British, US, and Chinese brands as well. The place is so popular that it gets between 10,000 and 25,000 visitors per day. China also has other replica towns that put you in a mini Manhattan called the Yujiapu Financial District. The developer's goal was to make this place the financial center of the world. It was complete with the right landmarks, like the Rockefeller and Lincoln Centers, but the project was halted in 2019, leaving it mainly empty. You can find a typical English town with cobbled streets, Victorian homes, and restaurants that make Thames Town. This place was meant to recreate a European lifestyle fantasy without leaving Shanghai. China also has a Dutch town that has some elements of Amsterdam with windmills and famous canals. They even decided to copy some of the landmarks, like the Netherlands Maritime Museum. Here's a bonus story of Lebanon's thinnest building built out of a dispute. It's the story of 2 brothers who both inherited unequal plots of land. One of the brothers happened to get a very thin plot of land and couldn't help but be jealous of his brother's nice plot of land. He wasn't pleased. Both of the lands overlooked the Mediterranean Sea in a lively neighborhood of Beirut. So it's no wonder that both brothers couldn't agree on how they should develop their lands. It was obvious that the brother with the most land could build a proper building. The other brother had to improvise. He decided to obstruct his brother's property by constructing a thin building enough to only fit 14 feet at its widest and 2 feet at its most narrow. It was constructed in 1954, and the locals of the area know it as the Grudge. The crazy thing is that the place was once habitable with many visitors enjoying their stay. It's not easy to live there, but it's part of living the experience. The building is still standing, but is empty. So, you're walking along a wide street of a huge megacity and feel as if you've suddenly been transported into a post-apocalyptic movie. Everything around is eerily quiet. The high-rise buildings surrounding you look new but deserted. There are no cars and no people. Has doomsday taken them all? Those might be your thoughts if you visited Ordos Kambashi, a new city in China's Inner Mongolia a few years ago. The place rose in a desert rapidly in less than a decade. It has wonderful architecture, lots of public spaces, and rows upon rows of fresh new houses. But the place didn't get famous because of it all. Instead, the city became known for something it didn't have: people. The media started calling it a ghost town. They claimed it was empty, with no businesses or life. Well, I've got so many questions here, and the main one is, why didn't people want to live there? Now there's a curious twist to this story. The thing is, news stories, which describe Ordos Kambashi as a ghost town and generally a failure, began in 2009. Some reporters visited the place and figured out that not so many people lived there. At that time, the city indeed looked like a megalopolis after a terrible disaster. But the problem was, the reporters didn't ask local officials why the city was so empty, and they missed a key point. By that time, the city had only been under construction for 6 years. It hadn't even been finished yet. True, there weren't many people living there when they called the place a ghost city, but the reporters didn't know the full story and exaggerated the facts to impress readers. You want to know the real story? Ordos wasn't a ghost town built for nobody. It was just a city still in the making. The city's original plan was to build a comfortable place for 1 million people by 2023. But some unpleasant changes in the coal market occurred. Sadly, it was Ordos's main source of income, so the plan was scaled down to about 300,000 people. In its first 5 years, Ordos Kembashi got a whole downtown with offices, a world-class museum, and an opera house. It even had a cool library. It was shaped like books standing on a shelf. But even though the place already looked like a city, in reality, it was still under construction. It wasn't a ghost town. It was more like a construction site. Early on, nobody lived in Ordos Kembashi full-time since there weren't enough schools, hospitals, and shops. People went there to work and then returned to their hometowns at the end of the day. It took a few more years to build these facilities, so no wonder that, at first, the population of the city was small. Ordos isn't a true ghost town these days, just as our next destination. We're traveling all the way to Africa to a massive new residential area, Nova Cidade de Colomba. You can find it 18 miles away from Angola's capital, Luanda. The city has 750 apartment buildings, more than a dozen schools, and over 100 retail spaces. The project cost $3.5 billion, more than I make in a year, and was supposed to house up to 500,000 people. They used to show Colomba in glossy promotional videos. In those mini-movies, happy families lived far from the crowded, chaotic districts of Luanda. But there was a catch. The people in the videos were not real residents, they were actors. Because nearly a year after the first 2,800 apartments had gone on sale, only 220 were sold. If you had come to visit Colomba in the first years of its existence, it would have been eerily quiet. You would have seen the rows of colorful apartment buildings standing empty, closed shutters, deserted balconies. There would have been barely any cars and hardly anyone around. Most of the shops would have been vacant, except for the hypermarket at the entrance. Even if people had lived there would have been nowhere to buy basic things, like food. There's no mystery here. Apartments in Colombo were priced between $120,000 and $200,000, and that was way far beyond the reach of most Angolans. 2/3 of them live on less than $2 a day. It was also incredibly difficult to get a bank loan. Even with new laws designed to help people get mortgages, many Angolans couldn't afford the down payments, even those with decent-paying jobs. Luckily, sometime later, prices of the smallest units were reduced from $125,000 to $70,000. As a result, the population increased to 80,000 residents by July 2015. In 2019, the population was already 129,000. As for 2024, Colomba has become a desired destination for middle-class Angolans. Meanwhile, it's time to visit the next place on our list of post-apocalyptic megacities. Imagine walking down cobblestone streets with lines of charming old-style homes on each side. You pass Edwardian houses and Victorian terraces. Oh look, a fish and chip shop over there, and iconic red phone boxes. It looks like a scene straight out of England. But here's the twist. You're only 40 minutes away from downtown Shanghai. Huh? The thing is, Shanghai tried to give its residents a taste of the world. And back in 2001, they started an ambitious project called One City, 9 Towns. The idea was to relieve terrible overcrowding in the city by building 9 suburban communities. Each of them was designed to look like a different Western country. One of those is Thames Town, a little slice of England. Over $330 million was spent creating this mini England from scratch. They even imported actual lampposts from the UK and built a replica of a famous Gothic church from Bristol. But it wasn't just about England. Other towns were inspired by Germany, Spain, the Netherlands, and even Canada. So, what happened? Well, the houses in Thames Town sold fast, but most of the middle-class people they were meant for couldn't afford them. Instead, wealthy buyers swooped in, getting them as investments or second homes. And now Thames Town and most of the other 9 towns remain empty. The area has turned into a ghost town, with beautiful houses and shops, but no one to live there. Our next destination isn't too far away. Welcome to one of the strangest capital cities in the world, Naypyidaw. Now, imagine a city built from scratch right in the middle of rice paddies and sugarcane fields. In 2005, Myanmar showed the world its brand new capital, named Naypyidaw, which means the seat of the king. The rumor has it, the city cost up to $4 billion to build. This surreal city is 6 times the size of New York City. Everything there is supersized. Roads have up to 20 lanes and stretch as far as the eye can see. There's a safari park and at least 2 golf courses. Unlike in the rest of the country, there's reliable electricity there, and many restaurants have free fast Wi-Fi. But there's one big issue: the place is weirdly empty. It even got international attention because of its odd layout and ghost town vibe. If you look closer, though, you might spot pairs of street cleaners in neon green vests. They're walking up and down those roads, sweeping streets that are already spotless. But what's the point if no one wants to live there? People say it's boring, expensive, and has no infrastructure for life. The whole place feels like an extreme test of if you build it, they will come. The test the city seems to have failed. Let's fly back to the USA now. There, in Pennsylvania, you'll see a town on fire. It's Centralia, a near ghost town. Since 1962, a coal fire has been burning underneath this small town and is likely to keep burning for the next 250 years. It all started with an attempt to clean up the local landfill. It accidentally ignited the coal seams underground. Over the years, people abandoned their homes as the fire created dangerous sinkholes and filled the air with poisonous gas, such as carbon monoxide. In 1992, the state had taken over most of the land, leaving just a handful of residents. They agreed to give up their property when they passed away. Centralia was doomed, and the fire is still burning beneath its empty streets. So, tell me, which of the ghost cities would you like to visit? Tell us in the comments. It's one of the most famous Instagrammable spots in the world. There are pictures of people leaning on it or pretending to support it so it doesn't fall. There are even images of it looking like an intricate ice cream scoop. Of course, I'm talking about the Leaning Tower of Pisa, a famous Italian landmark. It always looks as if it's seconds away from toppling over. Located in the Italian city of Pisa, which would make sense, this construction is better known for its precarious posture rather than its history or purpose. Back in 1178, when the construction of the tower was still underway, people realized that the building was starting to lean over, and that was even before they had reached the 3rd floor. They first blamed the architect, whose left leg was shorter than his right by 2 inches and had a built-in lean. But no, I just made that up. They soon figured out that this was happening because of the soft soil beneath the tower. It soon became obvious that starting construction on top of soil made of clay, fine sand, and shells wasn't a promising idea. Centuries went by. Soon, people understood that the 180-foot-tall tower wasn't merely leaning, it was falling in slow-mo, and at an alarming rate of 0.08 of an inch per year. Now that may not sound like a lot, but multiply that by hundreds of years and, well, you can just look at the pictures. These days, the Leaning Tower is more than 16 feet off its perpendicular axis. It's not toppling over, only because its center of gravity continues to fall within the base of the structure. Plus, it's constantly monitored by local authorities. Now, since I've already got you excited for your next trip to Italy, you should know that the Leaning Tower of Pisa isn't the only crooked building in the country. About 2 hours away from Pisa, up north in the city of Bologna, there's not one but 2 leaning constructions, Le Due Torri, which sounds better than the 2 towers. Now these towers were each named for the families that funded their construction, the Azianelli family and the Garasenda family. Because of its tilt, the Garasenda Tower is no longer open for visitors. The Azianelli Tower, however, can still offer tourists a wonderful view of the city. That is, if you manage to finish climbing almost 500 steps. It does come with a catch for students, though. Italians have a local superstition saying those who climb the tower up to the top will never be able to finish their studies. Well, that's certainly a disincentive. Now, Londoners have their own tilted tower, but it's probably not the one you may think about. Yup, it's the famous Big Ben or Elizabeth Tower. That's its official name, by the way. Big Ben is just the bell. Luckily, it's not leaning to one side as fast as other more impressively crooked buildings. It's currently tilting at a rate of 0.3 inches per year. This whole tilting thing is happening mostly because of several infrastructure projects, like the expansion of the London Underground or the construction of parking lots near this historic building. Locals are not that concerned, though. If the latest data is correct, it'll take Elizabeth Tower about 4,000 years to catch up with its Italian counterpart, the Tower of Pisa. Anyway, there's a strangely shaped building in Poland as well. It's called the Little Crooked House. You can find it in Sopot, Poland. Its construction was finished in 2004. This building looks like it just jumped out of a fairy tale. And no wonder. The architects behind this project claimed they had been inspired by books illustrated by Jan Schanzer. This project has a lot of striking details. For example, warped walls, sandstone frame windows, and stone decorations. The building also features curved tinted glass windows and a concave roof. As a popular tourist attraction in Poland, the Little Crooked House currently has a lot of shops, offices, and restaurants. Now, you don't have to travel all the way to Europe to check out tilting buildings. The Millennium Tower, located in the city of San Francisco, is leaning, sinking, and sliding. Either they've signed the building up for dance classes, or there's something wrong with it, don't you think? The biggest issue with the Millennium Tower apparently has to do with the 60 to 90 foot long friction piles that support it. They appear to have been driven into the sandy upper soil rather than the bedrock, which is 200 feet further down. Since the building is placed on land that can soon become too mushy, the solution might be to anchor the construction down to the bedrock. The current plan is to add a bunch of piles to help reduce the weight of the building's foundation. Surprisingly, in 2017, the inspection carried out by the local authorities confirmed that the building was still within safety requirements. There was some damage to the foundation and electrical system, though. But not all leaning structures are tilted as a result of an engineering mistake. The Capitol Gate Tower in Abu Dhabi, for example, is a 520-foot-tall skyscraper that leans almost 18 degrees to the west. It even made it to the Guinness World Records in 2010 as the world's furthest-leaning human-made tower. The engineering effort spent on it is impressive, to say the least. The angle of the tower is evened out by the world's first pre-cambered core. That's a fancy way of saying that loads of concrete was mixed with steel, and 490 piles going nearly 100 feet into the soil were added to the construction. Another modern and inclined architectural design is that of the Tower of Montreal, part of the city's Olympic Stadium, which is currently the tallest leaning building. It's over 575 feet tall. The Gate of Europe in Madrid consists of a couple of impressive twin towers, 374 feet tall and inclined at about 15 degrees. Well, we're heading back to Europe, to the City of Love. Before visiting Paris, don't forget to check out the Sinking House or Tilting House. Trust me, it's a place not a lot of people know about, and it's a great location for spectacular pictures. It's quite easy to miss out, since this construction isn't actually leaning. But if you angle your camera correctly, this quirky optical illusion will make your viewers think that you just visited a house that is halfway swallowed by the ground it stands on. Whoa! When you're in Montmartre, next to Sacré-Cœur, you'll see some steps. On the right-hand side, there's an orange house. And here's the trick. Because this house is located behind a pretty steep hill, all you need to do is rotate your camera at about 45 degrees to get the desired effect. Or you can take an even easier route and just edit the photo after you've taken it. There are cities in the world that are sinking right at this moment, some of them at an alarming rate. Probably the most worrying is the city of Venice. But if you ask a Venetian whether their city is sinking, they'll say, less than the sea is rising. Well, you got me there, pal. Under the city, there is sedimentary soil, which is still compacting and settling. That's why the problem here appears to be twofold. Not only did Venice sink about 9 inches in the past century, but the sea level also rises with each passing year. This makes this gorgeous region more prone to flooding. Even worse, during the colder season, the phenomenon called acqua alta or high water occurs. That's when an unusually high tide arrives together with strong winds and storms. In 1966, for example, one such storm raised the water in Venice to more than 6 feet above the usual level. One of the fastest sinking cities in the world is Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, which is also one of the world's most populated locations. The process has been happening for decades, and if the current data is correct, over 95% of North Jakarta will be flooded by 2050. The northern part of the city has sunk a shocking 8 feet in 10 years, and now the rate is almost 10 inches per year. Jakarta is also sliding, in some locations at a rate of almost 6 inches each year. The rest of the city is sinking and sliding too, but at least it happens at a more moderate rate compared to other locations in the world. The main reason for this alarming process is the fact that there isn't a big enough water supply for the huge population of the city, over 10 million people as of 2020. Strangely enough, the city does have fresh water at its disposal. It has 300 days of rain per year, and 13 rivers pass through it. The problem lies with the fact that this water cannot be stored, as Jakarta's wetlands have been turned into a concrete jungle. That's why people living in the city have to make their own wells to get fresh water. Continuously taking water from the ground leads to loads of empty underground space called subsidence. This leaves the city suspended on almost hollow ground, and eventually it will sink.
Fire! Fire! Everyone gets out of bed and rushes out to the street, but the whole city is ablaze. It's 1871, and the Great Fire of Chicago has just started. For 2 whole days, the Windy City, including the business district, saw nothing but ash, smoke, and flames. The fire stretched out for 4 miles, causing around $200 million in destruction. No one really knows how the Great Fire started, but some theories include a cow kicking over a lantern in a barn that quickly spread to the city. Other theories include a typical human mistake, and even a meteor shooting down from the sky, starting the massive fires. The problem was that any metropolitan area during the late 19th century was made almost entirely out of wood. Throughout history, our ancestors used wood to build shelters, ships, carts, and everyday objects, since wood was literally all over the place. Everything from cooking utensils, wheels, and tools to furniture was all wooden. Walking around town back then wouldn't feel as congested as a typical urban city today. After the Great Fire, buildings became predominantly made out of steel and concrete. China has the oldest and tallest timber building, or a skyscraper. It was built almost 1,000 years ago and is 220 feet tall, which is the equivalent of a 23-story building. It's still standing today after being restored a bunch of times. It survived around 7 major earthquakes. But just because a structure like this is still standing tall today, it doesn't mean we can go around building wooden skyscrapers out of nowhere. A lot of tall wooden structures exist today in Europe and the US, even though they were built after the steel and concrete rise. But they're just between 8 to 13 stories high, not enough to be labeled as skyscrapers. Japan plans to build a wooden skyscraper more than 1,100 feet tall, dubbed as the W350 project. They're scheduled to complete it by 2041 and turn modern cities into wooden wonderlands. The building will be made of 90% processed wood and 10% steel, and it won't be made out of regular wood. They'll use cross-laminated timber, or CLT, which is many sheets of wood glued and stuck together, creating a large plank that is even tougher than steel. But wooden structures are vulnerable to fire. Back at the time of the Great Fire of Chicago, they didn't have fireproof coatings that could be applied on the beams. Even steel structures have such coatings. and the beams of today won't be like the ones in the past. They're sturdy and big, so big that extremely high temperatures can't set them on fire. And in the case of steel, these boiling temperatures that can burn the wooden beams with the fireproof coatings will simply melt the steel structures. So either way, the problem of fire is unavoidable, and the aftermath is still the same, be it wood or steel. Every tall building sways with powerful wind. Wooden skyscrapers are no exception, and might be in more critical danger than their steel counterpart. But some engineers designed a way to avoid this problem by constructing the wooden building out of diamond and triangle shapes. A triangle by nature can have a secured base better than a rectangle. So by creating a triangle base, which would be the bottom third of the building, a wooden skyscraper can resist external forces like the wind. Plus, with such large real estate in the bottom, there would be enough place to build additional housing units or shops near the ground. Building a wooden skyscraper won't necessarily be on site. Engineers and architects will create the planning and blueprints on computers to guarantee the best possible design and structure to ensure aesthetic appearance and sturdiness. Workers can build the standardized models at a nearby factory and transport the prefabricated structures to the site. This system will save more time and have quality control from the ground up. In a concrete building, the cement has to be poured into empty beams and shapes that have to dry in days or weeks. Steel needs to be melted and molded into shapes to fit the structure and design. In the factories, the cross-laminated timber can be cut automatically and supervised by people to make sure nothing goes wrong. This will eventually save costs by not having that many construction workers. And when it's time for building, all they have to do is bring the structure in pieces, put them together, and raise it up. It won't be as messy as a regular construction site and won't take too much time. Only fixing the electrical planning, plumbing, and other internal operations will need a lot of on-site work. Then, a team for the finishing touch will come and do some last-minute brush-ups to make sure everything functions properly. And then, voila! You've got yourself a wooden skyscraper. Wood, in general, is more flexible and lighter than concrete and steel. A wooden skyscraper would withstand an earthquake better than a concrete building and would be less likely to collapse. And since wood is a natural insulator, residents can save on heating and cooling costs. Steel and concrete don't grow on trees, but wood does. And don't worry, it won't even make a dent as far as deforestation. People use less than 1% of the world's woods. Engineers and architects will have special timber farms grown for the purpose of construction. But if the world decided to turn to wood for the buildings of tomorrow, then mass deforestation would lead to extreme disasters in our forests. According to some researchers, replacing steel with wood could impact around 40% of forests annually. That still won't compensate for the new wood grown each year. Having wooden buildings around will help with carbon benefits. It requires less energy to produce than steel and concrete. According to some studies, a large building made of wood will have a much smaller carbon footprint than one made of steel and concrete, which amount to around 16% of global emissions. And since wood is lighter than steel, it'll save on fuel costs and require less to transport it, which will reduce emissions even more. Something like this will take decades to plan out and execute if people really wanted to make the switch. When people started switching to steel buildings, everyone started to notice its benefits. In the long run, wood rots and absorbs and releases moisture, which can compromise a structure. Some people have chosen recycled plastic to build new homes by turning it into rough powder and shaping it into whatever is desired. They created beams, blocks, bricks, and pillars. In South America, a group of people are already doing this by creating small two-bedroom houses made mostly out of recycled plastic. It's cheaper to make, gets rid of waste, and only takes 5 days to build, with 4 people building it. Maybe one day we'll see skyscrapers made out of recycled trash, and maybe even whole cities made out of trash. In Yemen, there's a small city known as the world's oldest metropolis. In the middle of the desert, the locals had to find a way to shelter themselves without the abundance of trees. Shibam, aka the Manhattan of the desert, is made out of fertile soil, hay, and water that were made into bricks and left to bake under the sun for days. This city was a pit stop for many travelers arriving in caravans back in the day. Most of the buildings were 7 stories high, and the ground floors were used to keep livestock and crops. The upper levels were places for socializing and looking out for any newcomers. Mud buildings are natural coolers. The mud repels heat, leaving the cool atmosphere trapped inside. The first reinforced concrete skyscraper was built in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1903. It was 16 stories high and wasn't even expected to last the whole night. People thought it would crumble from its own weight, while others believed it would topple over. When they removed the support columns, a local reporter stayed awake all night to document the building collapsing. But they were all wrong.
Saudi Arabia is digging a pit about 1,300 feet wide for a project called the Cube. It's a giant box meant to hold a full indoor city, right in the middle of another city. It's designed to hold more people than some small towns and surround them with ever-changing digital worlds. What's hiding behind this futuristic design? Let's find out. Sure, a sci-fi Minecraft block in the middle of a historic city would definitely be a landmark, but for these architects, that is just a side quest. They actually want to create a full-scale metropolis inside a single structure. This cube, known as the Mukaab, will be the center of a brand new downtown district in Riyadh. The scale alone makes it one of the most ambitious construction projects on Earth. The plan calls for a perfect cube that stands over 1,300 feet tall and is just as wide. To put that in perspective, you could fit around 20 Empire State Buildings inside this thing. Everything here is stacked like layers in a massive high-rise, so instead of crossing streets, you'd ride high-speed elevators between levels. Inside that box, the plan is to build a colossal hall in the center. Concept art shows the roof as a massive curved screen that can project almost anything, a blue ocean above you or a sky from another planet. If it works, walking in won't feel like entering a normal building. It might feel like stepping into a different dimension. In the middle of that big space, there's a plan for a spiral tower. It's supposed to be even taller than the Eiffel Tower and have hotels, restaurants, and movie theaters inside. If you manage to book a room there, don't expect to see regular streets out your window. Instead, you'll get a view right into a massive hall, showing whatever cool digital scene is playing at that time. Surrounding this core, the rest of the cube is organized into layers that function like neighborhoods. It's a mix of homes, workplaces, and visitor areas with museums, indoor parks, and huge shopping districts. It's also supposed to have its own internal transit system to move you around, so you never have to step outside. In theory, this single building could house around 400,000 people at the same time. Saudi Arabia isn't spending this kind of money just to collect cool drone shots. The country wants less of its future tied to oil, and more of it tied to visitors, tech companies, and big international events. New Murabba, the district around the cube, is supposed to turn Riyadh into a once-in-a-lifetime sightseeing destination. On paper, the cube works like a city-sized resort mashed together with a business district. If you live there, you sleep in the tower, work in the layers around it, and go out to parks, malls, and digital-themed worlds without ever stepping outside. For tourists, it's a giant, all-inclusive future city experience in a box. The timing is no accident. Riyadh is hosting the World Expo in 2030 and the World Cup in 2034. Millions of people will fly in with cameras in hand. If the cube is finished by then, it will instantly be on every influencer reel and every top 10 things you won't believe exist on Earth video. That's the kind of free marketing you can't buy later. This entire dream world comes with a price. The wider New Murabba project, with the cube as its centerpiece, carries an estimated cost of around $50 billion. That's the annual economy of a small country poured into one district. Early satellite images showed an empty patch of desert on the edge of the city. Later images from 2024 show a huge square crater exactly where the cube is supposed to stand. Crews have already ripped out around 353 million cubic feet of earth, enough to fill thousands of Olympic pools. Zoom in and you'll see rows of excavators chewing through the ground like a metal army. That means we're way past the "is this fake" phase. Construction is already underway. The real question now is much tougher. Can you actually turn this thing into a working vertical city in one of the hottest capitals on the planet on time without creating the world's most expensive cautionary tale? First, there's the desert problem. Riyadh sits in the middle of a desert where temperatures can be extreme. In summer, afternoon temperatures can sometimes go past 113 degrees Fahrenheit and stay there. Now, a giant sealed box sounds like a perfect way to trap heat, which is great if you want to cook vegetables, but not so great if you want a comfortable city. The architects get it, so they designed the shape to help with temperature control. Instead of a flat box, the cube is wrapped in overlapping triangular panels based on traditional Najdi patterns. These triangles break up the harsh desert sun and add more shaded surface. They also leave small gaps where air can move through. The basic idea is simple: block some sunlight to keep the inside cooler. Even with that clever shell, cooling a place like this is still a huge job. You're basically trying to air condition a small city that someone stacked upright. Every single degree outside, every sandstorm, every long summer day pushes the system harder and sends the energy bill even higher. Then there's the fake sky problem. In the concept art, the center hall looks like something out of a sci-fi game. The ceiling and parts of the walls turn into one giant curved screen, so you don't just walk into a decorated lobby. You walk into an ocean scene, or a fantasy city, or a Mars landscape that surrounds you on all sides. That kind of trick already exists in a smaller form. The Sphere in Las Vegas, for example, covers its interior with huge LED screens and throws people into moving digital worlds. The Cube wants to push that even further. Its dome would need a display that's many times larger and can give high-end results without overheating. All of this has to fit inside a very unusual building. A normal skyscraper is just a tall tower, and engineers know how to handle that. The cube is more like a giant hollow block with a big empty space in the middle and whole neighborhoods stacked around it. It still has to stand up and hold the outer walls, plus the central tower and dome, while the inside somehow doesn't turn into a cramped maze. Then there's the people problem. On a busy day, you've got crowds moving around. In an emergency, you'll need to get them out fast. That's hard enough in a normal mall, let alone in a stacked mini city. While the cube looks like something from another planet, the main idea isn't. There are other examples of architects trying to squeeze everything they can into a single building. In Chengdu, China, the New Century Global Center already seems like a dream come true for introverts. It's huge enough to feel like a mini city under one roof. You can wake up in a hotel, stroll down indoor streets, and relax on a sandy beach under an artificial sun, all without seeing the real sky outside. Just outside Berlin, there's a huge old airship hangar that's now the Tropical Islands Resort. It's big enough to fit the Statue of Liberty standing up inside. While the countryside can be covered in snow, people inside are swimming in warm water, walking past palm trees, and hanging out under a fake summer sky. Saudi Arabia isn't new to giant futuristic projects. Neom, for example, includes plans for The Line, a straight, mirrored city stretching for miles across the desert, even after recent scalebacks. The same push is behind plans for huge stadiums and even a year-round ski resort in the mountains of the desert country. Which is not a bad thing, because even if these mega projects fall short, they push the limits of what cities can be. Thousands of years ago, people built pyramids that still confuse us. Today, technology finally lets us attempt something just as strange, only this time it's a glowing cube in the desert. The cube is an experiment in how far we can bend engineering and imagination at the same time. Whatever the outcome, it's guaranteed to give us some exciting photos. The Museum of Bad Art, or MOBA in short, used to be located in an old basement in Dedham, Massachusetts. And currently, you can find it in Somerville, Massachusetts. It only accepts art pieces that are so bad you just can't ignore them. Their collection includes portraits. Get it? That's the name they use for portraits. And some really outrageous landscapes. There's also the MOBA Zoo, featuring really unfortunate depictions of our furry friends. Like any self-respecting museum, they also have a gift shop where you can purchase some prints, postcards, or even a coffee mug with your favorite bad art. Speaking of really unique experiences, how would you like to spend time in jail without actually having to break the law? In Scotland, there's a place called Inverary Jail. It's an actual former prison that dates back to the 1800s, where tourists can experience 19th century jail life. There are characters dressed in authentic costumes that make it even more realistic. You can participate in courtroom trials and work with other inmates. In Suwon, South Korea, visitors can check out a theme park built around the history and culture of toilets. It was opened in memory of the former city mayor. He dedicated a lot of time and local resources to improving the city's public toilets and sewer system. It goes without saying that this place has a lot of toilet-themed art documenting the world's restroom culture. You'll find everything here, from men's and women's bathroom signs from around the globe to photographs of public toilets, and information about the importance of sanitary facilities. A designer store in the middle of the desert? If you happen to pass by Texas, you'll find a Prada store on an empty stretch of US 90 outside of the small town of Valentine, about 150 miles from El Paso. Two Berlin artists wanted to offer Texans the high-end experience, sort of. That's because the curious store has no door to access it, and its 20 left-foot shoes and 6 purses set on display. Surprisingly, the store was built with the blessing of Miuccia Prada herself, the head designer of the brand. Can you imagine living in a city where you have your own beach access to a lagoon that leads directly into the sea? That might be possible in the near future, if you don't mind relocating to Sabah Al Ahmad Sea City in Kiran, Kuwait. This engineering masterpiece was inaugurated in 2016. Its canals form 120 miles of artificial shoreline. All those human-made islands were built by excavating large channels in the desert rather than using reclaimed land, as was done previously in similar conditions. Before visiting this museum, you have to take off the shoes you've been wearing and put on special slippers that won't damage the artwork, because it's everywhere. It's called the Electric Ladyland, and it's the world's first museum of fluorescent art. The owner, Nick Palladino, exhibits here a lot of his own sculptures and even naturally luminescent rocks, along with other human-made glowing objects. One portion of this art gallery features paintings that shift color under UV light. The soundtrack is awesome too. You'll hear a lot of the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix. Upside-down houses seem to be quite a tourist attraction. You can find them in many countries, such as Japan, Poland, Germany, and Austria. One of the best ones to visit is located in Malaysia. It's called Rumah Terbalik Upside Down House. It uses recycled wood and other natural materials to recreate a local atmosphere. It was opened back in 2012 and soon became a popular tourist attraction with its upside-down furniture and wacky household appliances. There's even an upside-down car parked in the garage. A spa-themed park located in Hakone, Japan, provides tourists with an interesting array of hot springs. Some of them are quite unusual, especially the unique noodle bar, where visitors can literally swim in a bowl of ramen. It's not for tasting though, since it's still a public space. The Dead Marsh in Namibia offers a cool experience which makes you think you're frozen in time. Since there's no water here and temperatures are really high, this sparse forest is made out of skeleton trees that haven't been alive for more than 600 years. Since there's little to no humidity, the remaining vegetation cannot fall apart, leaving behind this odd natural landscape. It even became the set for some sci-fi movies. Spoiler alert! But the paper house located north of Boston, Massachusetts is actually a house made completely out of paper, furniture and all. It was built by Ellis F. Stenman, the man behind the machine that makes paper clips. Back in the 1920s, he basically wanted a 2-room summer home for him and his family. It took him over 20 years to complete, since the house was made of about 100,000 newspapers. Just make sure you don't bring any lighters. Cappadocia Cave Hotel in Turkey is a great place to stay for both history buffs and people who are into modern and luxurious decor. All of the rooms and suites are located inside the local cave dwellings dating back to the Roman and Byzantine periods. Cappadocia is also famous for its hot air balloon tours. One of the reasons is because it's not very windy here and the view of the city is really beautiful, especially during sunset. The small Indian town of Deshnok certainly wouldn't be on your vacation list if you don't like rats. A 14th century legend has it that the rats living here are to be protected and nurtured. Over 20,000 rats live inside this famous location these days. Since they've been living there for so long, the rats are quite friendly with both locals and tourists. The Battle of the Oranges is a local festival happening each year in late February in a small Italian town of Ivrea. The local myth has it that the Carnaval de Ivrea started back in the Middle Ages. That's when locals stood against a hated ruler by throwing oranges at him in protest. It sounds like fun to join thousands of participants gathering there for 3 days to throw some oranges. Just don't forget to duck. Socotra Island in Yemen was separated from mainland Africa more than 6 million years ago. That's probably one of the reasons why this secluded island looks more like the set of a fantasy movie than a real location. The island has some incredible and unique flora. Most of the plants and trees that grow here are not found anywhere else in the world. Like, for example, the ancient twisted dragon's blood tree or the bulbous bottle tree. Japan's Tashirojima is rightly nicknamed Cat Island, since it has a population of 100,000 humans and almost 4 times as many felines. The cats were initially brought here since the island produced a lot of silk, and mice like silkworms a lot. More so, the cats were seen as a sign of good luck. There are even cat-shaped cabins for tourists to settle in, and it probably goes without saying that dogs aren't allowed there. There are about 1,700 weirdly shaped hills in the middle of Bohol Island in the Philippines. They're so unique that you might easily mistake them for human-made. They are, however, part of the UNESCO heritage, since they are naturally made out of coral deposits and shaped by rainwater erosion. Because of their quirky look, they earned the nickname of Chocolate Hills, since during the dry season, their exterior goes from lush green to brown. Big fan of cascading pools? Then make sure to check out another UNESCO World Heritage Site located in Pamukkale, Turkey. The name means Cotton Castle in Turkish. It's set in the ancient ruins of Hierapolis, a city that was built around the pools. Their crystal clear waters cascade from natural springs down to white travertine terraces. The view is so beautiful that you won't know what to do at first. Take a picture or jump in.
This is the Burj Khalifa. It's the tallest building in the world. It has 163 floors, and it's twice as tall as the Empire State Building, and 3 times taller than the Eiffel Tower. The total weight of the concrete for the building's foundation is 110,000 tons. That's like 2,200 Boeing 737s, or 50,000 SUVs, or 69,000 hippos. It took 22 million human hours to build. That means that if you were to build Burj Khalifa by yourself, it would take you about 2,500 years to do it. And now, imagine that huge thing slowly sinking into the sand until even its spire is underground. Skyscrapers are usually built on solid ground. Take a skyscraper in New York and dig a little deeper under it. There's always some kind of rock foundation to support the weight of the building. But if you dig a hole in Dubai, you'll only find sand. In theory, the whole city should have sunk in the sand, but it's still there. The main reason the Burj Khalifa stands firm is that the sand for the building's foundation was brought from Australia. Wait, but Dubai is built in a desert. There are billions of tons of sand there. Well, that's right, but the problem is its shape. There are lots of dust storms there. The wind picks up sand grains. They rub against one another, get polished, and gradually turn into microscopic balls. This makes the sand doughy, almost like snow. And if you squeeze a handful of such sand, there will be a lot of air between these balls. That's because they don't cling to one another tightly. But usually, sand grains are shaped like diamonds. If you squeeze such sand in your hand, the grains will press against one another like puzzle pieces. This way, they can withstand intense pressure. So, engineers imported millions of tons of sand to Dubai to create a strong base for the foundation of the building. The second thing about this type of sand is friction. The less smooth it is, the harder it is for you to slide on it. The building will literally cling to the sand with its foundation. Now, let's sneak a peek underneath the Burj Khalifa. First, the engineers drilled 192 holes, each about 164 feet deep. That's 3 times the length of a New York City subway car. Then, these holes were filled with concrete and about 39,000 tons of steel rebars to reinforce the structure. These are called piles. Concrete resists compression well enough, but it doesn't fare well when it gets twisted or bent. Luckily, steel rebars are great at dampening those forces. The sand around the piles is tight against the concrete. The friction between the sand and the piles keeps them from falling deeper. It's like sticking your hand in the sand at the beach. It can easily go down a dozen inches, but then the friction will stop it. When the piles were ready, it was time to create the base of the building, something like a concrete pillow. It's shaped like a flower with 3 petals, but this is not only for beauty, it's also for reliability. When you step on doughy snow with your feet, you fall all the way down to more solid ground. But if you wear snowshoes, you can walk on the snow surface. This is because your weight is distributed over the snowshoe area. The shape of the base of the Burj Khalifa has the same function. It distributes the construction's weight evenly so that the building doesn't sink into the sand. When the base was ready, workers began constructing the building itself. Whoa, it really swings a bit. Don't worry, it's done on purpose so that the skyscraper doesn't collapse. If you make the construction too stiff and don't let it swing, at one point, a strong gust of wind can just break it at the very base, and it will fall. So all skyscrapers are made a bit flexible. When the wind blows, the skyscraper tilts a little. This puts a lot of force on one side of the building's foundation. But concrete tends to shrink slightly, which dampens that force. Then the concrete decompresses and returns back to normal. When the wind is especially strong, the spire of the Burj Khalifa can sway 6.5 feet. The architects have come up with an even crazier idea for Dubai: a spinning building. It'll be an ordinary skyscraper, but each floor will rotate 360 degrees. Engineers are planning to install a rigid rod inside the skyscraper. It'll hold the entire weight of the construction on itself. Then each floor of the building will be attached to that rod, and the inhabitants of each floor will be able to choose the direction and speed of rotation. So, building on sand is actually quite reliable and simple. It was much harder to build skyscrapers in Manhattan. There's hard rock that can support a skyscraper there, but it lies 10 stories deep underground. So, engineers came up with a solution. These are wells. First, a concrete ring is placed on the ground. Workers start digging a hole right underneath it. They remove soft soil, and the concrete ring begins to sink under its own weight. The builders then put another ring on top of it and continue digging. One by one, the rings go lower and lower. A small crane helps to lift the soil to the surface. It's essentially a vertical tunnel that leads to nowhere. When the well reaches the rock hidden underneath the soil, the builders climb back to the top. The well is then filled with concrete. It looks like a giant pile. A dozen of these powerful piles can support a large skyscraper. But it's much harder to create a building foundation in a seismically active zone. That means a place where earthquakes frequently happen. The method of protection against them is simple. Like with high winds, you need to make the building flexible. Let's look at the foundation of such a construction. Good old piles hold the enormous weight of the skyscraper. but the concrete pad of the building itself stands on huge springs. During an earthquake, the ground shakes and moves from side to side, but the springs dampen and compensate for the movement, so the building stays in place. Also, engineers surround buildings in earthquake zones with concrete circles underground. So, here's a skyscraper with its foundation. Here's one ring around it, and here's another. When an earthquake hits and the ground starts to shake, these rings dampen the force of the earthquake. And if around the rings it feels like strong waves, inside the perimeter, it's like a calm bay. Another option is to reinforce the building with steel beams. You may have seen these things on bridge piers, but in this case, there are small cylinders on each beam. Each cylinder is filled with oil and has a piston. When the building starts to swing during an earthquake, the piston starts to compress the oil in the cylinder. The oil turns the mechanical energy from the swinging into heat. This dampens the energy released by the earthquake. And sometimes, engineers have to construct a building in a place where there's a lot of water in the soil. If you drill a hole for a pile there and fill it with concrete, the water will wash out the cement or keep it from drying out. In such cases, you have to freeze that water. To do it, builders make a lot of small drill holes at the construction site. Then they put pipes into these holes and create a connected pipe system. There's a similar pipe system in your fridge. It's hidden under the inner paneling. Now, we pump some liquid nitrogen inside. The water gives off its heat to the liquid nitrogen and starts to freeze. Meanwhile, the workers have time to fill the pile holes with concrete. But water in its ice form takes up more space than in liquid form. So when the ice melts, the ground sags a little. So what if you want to build a city on water, like Venice? Then you'll need long piles. The builders of Venice used wooden ones. They had to get to the bottom of the lagoon first, and then they moved a few more dozen feet deeper through the soft clay soil until they reached the hard rock. The builders drove such piles around the perimeter of the future building, and the construction itself was built in such a way that most of its weight rested on the outer walls. If you dive underwater in Venice, you'll see hundreds of thousands of such piles. The task is more difficult if you build a bridge. In addition to a solid foundation, you have to take into account thermal expansion. The rule is simple. When something gets hot, it expands, and when it cools, it shrinks. Look at railroads. There is a gap between each rail. The clatter of the wheels you hear when on a train is born exactly on these gaps. When the sun heats the rails in the summer, they extend. This creates tension inside the metal. Then the rail can bend sideways or even upward, like a worm. But if engineers have provided such gaps, the metal will expand and fill that space. A bridge is exactly the same as a huge rail, and in hot weather, it can expand too. So engineers leave gaps there on purpose. You can see them on the surface of the bridge. They're usually covered with a sheet of metal that looks like a comb. When the bridge heats up, these combs come together. Have you ever seen a skyscraper that can change its shape? The creators of the F&F Tower in Panama City had a concept and only $50 million, which isn't a lot in skyscraper money. So they couldn't afford a mistake, and they finished a concrete structure with the 39 upper floors rotating 9 degrees around an axis from the first attempt without spending any extra time or materials. Dubai's rotating tower will look different every time you see it once it's finished. Each of its 80 floors will rotate 360 degrees individually around the center of the building. The lucky residents will be able to control that rotation, which means they can choose their view from the window. A complete lap should take about 90 minutes. And no, the tower won't be a huge waste of electricity. It will produce its own energy. Wind turbines between the floors will drive the rotations. If you've ever wanted to live inside a video game, book an apartment in the King Power Mahana Khan building. This pixelated skyscraper, around the height of the Eiffel Tower, is the tallest building in Thailand. The secret behind its looks is the horizontally and vertically divided glass windows. It took 5 years to finish this beauty with over 200 apartments, a hotel, luxury shops, restaurants, and one of the most breathtaking viewpoints in the world. The Libyan International Building features one of the world's tallest artificial waterfalls, running right down its side. No worries, they only turn it on special occasions, and it uses a mix of recycled tap water and rainwater. When it started running for the first time, the non-informed locals even reported a huge water leak. The Cybertexture office building in Mumbai looks like a huge egg made of glass and steel. It was actually inspired by a vessel that, like our planet, has its own ecosystem. To bring down the heat levels inside, the architects chose the ideal orientation and added sun shading and an underground cooling system. The Marina Bay Sands in Singapore seems like a Stonehenge look-alike, but its architect claims that he was inspired by a house of cards. The horizontal one is balanced on the 3 vertical ones. They are 3 55-story hotels with restaurants, nightclubs, gardens, shops, museums, and movie theaters. The horizontal card is an infinity swimming pool with the best view of the city for up to 4,000 visitors. The pool hangs at the height of the 57th floor, and it feels like nothing is holding it. The dancing house definitely stands out among the more traditional architecture in Prague. The nickname for the house is Fred and Ginger. The stone tower symbolizes the famous dancer Fred Astaire, and the glass tower, his partner, Ginger Rogers. There's even imaginary hair on top of Fred's tower. 99 concrete panels support the dancing shape, all of them of different dimensions. Umeda Sky Building, twice the height of Big Ben, consists of 2 towers of glass and steel to the north of Osaka Station. The floating garden observatory connects the towers on top. Although the building is in a huge city, the skywalk is so high in the clouds that the only thing you'll hear up there is the wind. If you're scared of heights, you can visit an urban garden, a theater, an art museum, or one of the many offices closer to the ground inside the building. Architect Octavio Mendoza owns probably the largest piece of pottery in the world. If you're ever in Colombia, ask the locals for directions to the Flintstone House. Yes, they call it that for a reason. The official name is Casa Terracotta, and the architect only used clay to build it. He let it bake and harden in the sun, which transformed the pliable material into solid ceramic. Every curve of the building is designed after the surrounding hills. All the furniture inside is also made of clay. Mendoza is determined to work on the casa for the rest of his life. Artists Dennis Sullivan and Francis Conklin have been saving money for 15 years, carving smaller wooden dogs to create their dream project. The Dog Bark Park Inn in Cottonwood is a 12-foot beagle that stands proud in the Idaho prairie. There is a bedroom and a living area in its body, and an extra bedroom in the head. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be inside a huge carpet? Me neither, but checking out the Azerbaijan National Carpet Museum is definitely worth it anyway. It shows the history of this important local craft in every detail. Austrian architect Franz Jans designed the construction, and it took 6 years to finish it. The Basket Building in Ohio looks exactly like a real shopping basket, except it's 160 times larger. It even has 2 attached handles. The building served as the headquarters of Longaberger Basket Company, then was sold to become a luxury hotel. A giant whale? An airship? Can you guess what's inside this building in Graz, Austria? 2 British architects won the Europe-wide competition to design this art museum. The biomorphic construction has around 1,000 acrylic glass elements on its skin. During the night, it can send light signals and messages to people on the other side of the river. It takes in daylight from the north through nozzles on its top. The needle is a viewing platform. The Half House in Toronto, Canada, was built in the late 19th century and was one of 6 identical houses standing next to each other. When developers came to this area, the owners of all the other houses agreed to move, and this one wouldn't go. A demolition crew showed some impressive skills as they managed to tear down the neighboring house without doing any damage at all to what is now the Half House. The white exterior wall used to be load-bearing, dividing the neighbors' bedrooms and living rooms. One wrong move of the excavator, and the entire construction would become ruins. The Shell House in Isla Mujeres, Mexico, stands by the ocean, was inspired by the ocean, and looks like one of the ocean's symbols. The house is shell-shaped and covered with shells from nearby beaches. Architect Eduardo Ocampo designed this beauty as he wanted to have a one-of-a-kind house for his brother to come and visit more often. Now it's up for rent for vacationers. The Bubble Palace, not far away from Cannes in France, was designed by a Hungarian architect and purchased by Pierre Cardin. In case you have a couple of spare million, you can buy this interesting property. You'll get 10-bedroom suites decorated by contemporary artists, gardens, water ponds, a swimming pool, and a 500-seat outdoor auditorium with an awesome view of the Bay of Cannes as a bonus. Can you find one house standing straight here? I know, I also failed. All the cubes in the Cube House in Rotterdam are tilted 45 degrees at their side. The idea here was to make the most of the space. Dutch architect Piet Blom designed the houses in the late 70s to look like an abstract forest. Each triangular roof represents a treetop. The houses stand at 3 floors tall, with an entrance on the ground floor, an open kitchen, and a living room on the first floor, as well as a bathroom with 2 bedrooms on the top floor. The Boot in Tasman, New Zealand is a hotel that looks like it comes straight out of a children's book. It even has legit shoelaces. There's a spiral staircase, cozy fireplace, kitchenette, and a bedroom with a balcony. If you ever find yourself in Mitchell, South Dakota, be sure not to miss out on their key tourist attraction, the Corn Palace. The locals have always been so proud of prairie gold that they first built a palace out of corn back in 1892 to prove to the rest of the world how fertile their lands are. What you can see now is the rebuilt version. Every year, they put new corn in 13 shades to form new beautiful murals.
Most of Europe's skyscrapers are concentrated in 5 cities. Those are London, Frankfurt, Paris, Moscow, and Istanbul. But even combined, all these places have fewer skyscrapers than New York City alone. For a building to be considered a modern skyscraper, it has to be about 490 feet high, which means it should have at least 40 to 50 stories. A story is simply one floor of a building with an average of 14 feet from floor to ceiling. If you had visited the US just before the 1870s, you'd have found only one skyscraper. The home insurance business in Chicago was the world's first high-rise building with 10 floors. Wow! In Europe, the first skyscrapers appeared in Moscow. They were called the Seven Sisters, but they were built only in the mid-1900s. North America started to construct more and more high-rise buildings. It happened because cities were getting too populated. Every piece of land was too valuable. New York's skyline is so famous you'd probably recognize it even if you've never been to this city before. It's the same for Paris. But could you imagine the Eiffel Tower surrounded or even blocked by skyscrapers? It would surely lose some of its magic. La Défense district is where you'll find skyscrapers in Paris. This way, they don't interfere with the romantic and touristic scenery of the city. In London, things are done a bit differently. Some of its skyscrapers have unusual shapes. One of such constructions is the Gherkin. If you get stuck in this building, you'd really be in a pickle. Another interestingly shaped skyscraper is the Shard. There's one more nicknamed the Cheese Grater. These are not their official names, of course, but they do make sense if you look at the shape of these buildings. But it's not some random architectural concept. The reason the skyscrapers are shaped like this is not to obscure St. Paul's Cathedral. By the way, the top of this monumental construction is visible even from King Henry VIII's mound, and that's a great distance away. Anyway, there are also other sites, like the Tower of London and the Palace of Westminster. They have their own viewpoints. So, not to ruin London's skyline, it's not allowed to build anything that would block these monuments. Most European cities already existed when the US started to build its first skyscrapers. That's why they didn't have much space to fit in giant buildings. Evenly zoned cities were the result of their steady growth throughout the years. For example, in Lisbon, there's a viewpoint in Eduardo VII Park. From that point, you can see all the park and the river. If suddenly there was a bunch of 490-foot-tall buildings standing around, this gorgeous view would be totally ruined. You wouldn't see the iconic avenue, and forget the river. Instead, there are buildings. Like Lisbon, many other cities in Europe don't want skyscrapers to spoil their cultural heritage. Take Germany. Most of their skyscrapers are in Frankfurt. In other cities, they'd rather protect and restore the buildings that are already standing. And even if, let's say, Berlin wanted to home some skyscrapers, it wouldn't be able to do it in any case. Its soil just wouldn't allow it. Put a skyscraper there and it'll sink. Constructing a foundation for a very tall building in Berlin would mean investing a lot of money. The soil's too sandy and soft. But what if you ignored all the cultural heritage and still decided to fill a European city like Prague with skyscrapers? First, you'd have to demolish a lot of what already exists there. This would lead to an angry crowd of people complaining that the city they know and love is gone. Brussels has experienced this to a certain extent. There's even a term for this phenomenon: Brusselization. Simply put, it means not caring where you place new high-rise buildings. Here is fine. Oh, sprout one over there too. Hey, we could call them Brussels sprouts. Or not. But in most cases, city authorities don't want new constructions to change the historical appearance of the place. Some large European cities might even follow France's example and choose a separate district, a place just for skyscrapers. The Burj Khalifa, which is more than 2,700 feet high, is the tallest building in the world. It wasn't an easy feat to construct it. The skyscraper took 6 years to build, and folks say it was worth the effort. The construction is so tall, you can see it from 60 miles away on a clear day. The tallest building in Europe is only half that size. The Lachta Center in St. Petersburg is a bit more than 1,500 feet tall. Well, the question is, if skyscrapers are so tall, why don't they get knocked over by wind? Their structure, from the very foundation to the highest point of the building, is the answer. Take the Burj Khalifa, please. The soil where the skyscraper is built isn't ideal. So, beneath the 110,000-ton concrete foundation of this massive construction, there are 192 piles driven to a depth of more than 160 feet. Thanks to the friction between the concrete and soil, these piles don't move at all, creating a solid foundation. But most skyscrapers are built on bedrock because it barely shifts. Their frames are made of steel. If you looked at a skyscraper without its external structure, all you'd see would be a bunch of steel beams. The taller the building, the more the winds affect it. Taming them is one of the biggest challenges skyscrapers have to tackle. Imagine you're on one of the top floors of a skyscraper. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind hits the building. The entire construction starts wobbling, and you can feel it even inside. You might even get knocked over if you don't grab onto something. To avoid such a situation, most skyscrapers have a pendulum-like structure inside. It absorbs some of the wind's force. This thing is called a tuned mass damper. The mechanism acts as a counterweight. When the skyscraper gets hit by the wind, it's the tuned mass damper that moves instead of the building. Some high-rise constructions don't need this pendulum. The Shard, for example, deals with the wind with the help of its tapered shape, and Shanghai Tower uses its 120-degree twist. Both skyscrapers have incredibly smart structures. That's why they don't get too wobbly when the wind hits them. The Shard doesn't have a tuned mass damper whatsoever, and the one in Shanghai Tower only serves as a tourist attraction. Before a building's design is finalized, it normally undergoes a wind tunnel test. A model city is built and tested with this new super tall addition. When the experts turn the wind on, it simulates real-life conditions. Let's say the model skyscraper breaks under the wind's pressure during the test. Then the chances are it's going to tumble over in real life too. Winds up there can be so strong that things like wind turbines have become a thing. The Bahrain World Center has 3 of them right in the middle of the building. But there are some others. Strata SE1, for example, has wind turbines at the top. There's a phenomenon called the downdraft effect. It's accelerated winds near the skyscraper. When a powerful gust of wind hits a high-rise building, it gets pushed upward around the sides of the construction and down toward the street. That's why if you're passing by a particularly tall building on a windy day, you might have to force your way around. But let's say several square-cornered skyscrapers are built next to each other. Then they're likely to channel the wind through the streets. This can create many hurricanes on especially windy days. A study once examined 100 tallest buildings that were about to be dismantled by their owners. It turned out most of them had an average lifespan of a mere 42 years, but some of them can last much longer. For example, the Temple Court building is still standing to this day. At 150 feet, it's a bit smaller than others, but it's already seen 100 winters throughout its life. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when you think of getting rid of a building is dust, debris, and deafening noise. But things aren't quite as dramatic as that for most skyscrapers. When you want it gone, you take it apart, bit by bit. This process starts from the top and goes all the way down to the bottom. Voila! The building is slowly disappearing in front of your eyes. Abracadabra.
You have about $130 million. What would you do with it? Fly into space or buy an island? There are many ways you can spend this much money, but one anonymous investor used it to build an extravagant underwater city. The project is not finished yet, and a lot of people are currently working really hard to make this crazy idea come to life. If all goes well, in the near future, living under the sea may become a reality. In the past century, there was a limestone quarry near the Welsh border in England. In the 1990s, it became flooded and turned into a lake 260 feet deep. Now, there's a large construction project going on around it. Trucks transport materials and people in overalls construct huge modules that look like giant futuristic submarines. These modules are called sentinels, and they will become the buildings of a small underwater city. Builders and engineers create durable stainless steel materials that allow these houses to withstand a depth of up to 650 feet. This is the upper limit of the twilight zone, where very little sunlight penetrates. Large squid and other creatures live in this zone. Imagine waking up in an underwater hotel room and seeing a giant squid staring at you from the dark. Or even worse, you see a huge eye watching you as you wake up. This could happen if sentinels were successfully installed in the depths of the ocean. Meanwhile, let's return to our project on a small lake. The project is called Deep. Its goal is to make life underwater as comfortable as possible. Inside living modules, builders install bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, and observation windows. People will access them using small submarines. However, it's not as simple as calling a taxi. To live underwater, you need to train under the guidance of experienced instructors to test yourself in underwater life simulators. The cost of living there will likely be expensive, but it's worth it. At least you will be well fed. A chef will develop a special menu, and all food will be stored in vacuum-sealed bags to preserve its flavor and nutrients. It all sounds great, but there's a question. Who is financing this project? No one knows the answer. Deep is funded by a secret investor who has already spent more than $100 million. Interestingly, this is not the first attempt to create an underwater dwelling. For example, Jacques-Yves Cousteau, a famous diver explorer, first created the Conshelf 1 underwater house in 1962. This was a steel cylinder located at a depth of 30 feet, where 2 divers lived for a week. In 1970, several women also spent 14 days underwater in the Caribbean Sea at a depth of 50 feet. The aim of that project was to study human psychology in a cramped environment, similar to that of a spaceship. Unsurprisingly, that project was partly funded by NASA. Okay, we have windows overlooking marine life, delicious food, underwater parties, and solitude away from civilization. All these things sound cool, but if we put aside the fun part for a moment, is there any real benefit to it? Oh yeah, ocean exploration. Many marine biologists believe that the best way to explore the ocean is from within. Diving doesn't help much since divers are limited by time and body needs. They can stay underwater for only about an hour and a half at a time. Underwater cities could allow us to live underwater for months. But the most important thing is long-term observation of marine life in its natural habitat. In the mid-1990s, a group of researchers wanted to study the development and nutrition of corals. They brought them to the lab for testing and found out that corals reacted differently to tests in artificial environments than in the ocean. Their behavior in a laboratory setting was different from their behavior in the wild. Underwater cities could also provide work for archaeologists who study the remains of ships that have sunk throughout history. Plus, such cities could help protect us from future disasters. In the event of a catastrophe like an earthquake, tsunami, or volcanic eruption, scientists and engineers could build water-based shelters like the Sub-Biosphere 2 project to provide refuge for people. These circular structures could sink into the ocean and give shelter for up to 50 or 100 people, allowing them to wait out the disaster from a safe distance. Underwater cities could be an excellent solution to overpopulation, but there are some downsides. We already pollute the world's oceans, and what if we literally lived inside them? It's one thing to use labs to study marine life, but it's another to build hotels for vacationers. One such hotel, called the Water Discus, is a building at a depth of no more than 32 feet. It will have 21 rooms and a restaurant with coral reef views. While the conditions seem comfortable, some experts worry that staying there for long periods could be harmful because of the lack of sunlight. Nevertheless, it would be interesting to stay there for a week and see how it feels. The most challenging aspect of creating such laboratories, hotels, and bunkers is ensuring a reliable life support and safety system. It's crucial that the air, humidity, and temperature be as comfortable as possible for people to live in these structures. However, this requires a significant amount of energy. Currently, all modern underwater buildings rely on external sources of energy located on the surface. But scientists plan to make future underwater projects fully autonomous, using kinetic energy from waves and powerful solar panels to generate power. It's also important to create the right structure for these buildings. Rather than covering an underwater city with a giant bubble, it's more efficient to create several large housing modules. Each module should consist of steel, glass, and special cement. Also, the depth shouldn't exceed 1,000 feet, since a deeper location would require thicker walls because of high water pressure. To load and move these residential modules safely, engineers can use ballast tanks. These are large containers filled with water, which are used to pull the modules down deep into the ocean. Once in place, engineers can release the water from the tanks and fill them with air, causing the house to float back to the surface. And what about fresh air? Fish extract oxygen from the water using their gills, but this method is obviously not suitable for humans. Therefore, we need to deliver air from the surface. It can be piped into the city and mixed with a special substance called sodasorb, which reacts with carbon dioxide and removes it. It would be great if we could generate oxygen inside our underwater cities rather than relying on other sources. This would require farms and plants that can produce oxygen through photosynthesis. But instead of sunlight, these plants would use artificial light. If we talk about complete autonomy, people could get food from the water at any moment, put on scuba gear, a mask, and an oxygen tank, and leave the hotel through an airlock. Use harpoons and fishing nets to catch dinner. Remember to check your oxygen reserves and don't swim for too long. Frying fish in a pan won't work because of strong odors. In an underwater dwelling, air is static like in an airplane cabin, so odors become stronger. Maybe in the future, engineers will create a dedicated cooking area, but for now, you'll have to rely on canned and dehydrated food. If you get bored, go for an underwater walk. Instead of carrying oxygen tanks, use hollow tubes connecting your mask to an air source inside your home. But don't forget that you can't go too far because the length of the tube is limited. Air, food, safe construction. What else? Drinking water. In the future, scientists may create filters in these hotels that desalinate salt water. This water can be extracted from the condensation inside the hotel, as well as from human secretions. Don't be surprised. Astronauts, for example, have been using special technology to filter their liquids and turn them into drinking water for a long time.
Hey, future explorers. Let me tell you, some stuff might still be hanging around even 2,000 years later. Finland has an underground nuclear storage facility designed to last 100,000 years. Picture a massive underground tunnel system carved right out of solid rock. They wanted a solution that wouldn't burden future generations with constant babysitting in the area. This impressive place sits about 185 miles northwest of Helsinki. The engineers started planning it way back in the 1970s. They wanted to close up shop and decommission it in the 2000s. The heart of the crib is a spiraling track that's going to stretch 3 miles, diving down. To ensure maximum safety, they've got a bunch of multiple barriers in place. Steel and concrete structures are supposed to do the job. The waste fuel rods will be snuggled inside copper canisters with thick walls. These canisters will sit on a cozy bed of bentonite clay, which swells up when it gets wet. This way, it acts as a buffer against any geological shenanigans and prevents any pooling of liquid, which could corrode the copper. It's an incredible feat of engineering, and it's almost like creating a time capsule that will withstand the test of time. Kudos to the folks working on this, even though they won't be around to celebrate when it's done. Maybe in the future, they will find a way to make it last for hundreds of years more. I mean, they started planning it in the 1970s, but in the future, it would be a totally different game. Let's move on to Italy. When you stroll into the Pantheon in Rome, it puts on a show just like it did almost 2,000 years ago. Now, let's rewind a bit. This structure went through some tough times. The first Pantheon caught fire and burned down not once, but twice. Some fellas even said it was cursed. The completed Pantheon was a grand masterpiece with Greek-inspired touches, like those fancy columns. But the real jaw-dropper was its gigantic dome. The largest unsupported concrete dome on the planet. Now, the Pantheon's original purpose remains a mystery. Some say it was a Roman worshipping spot, while others think it was where the emperor got his hotline to the deities. The massive eye on top, known as the oculus, lets in sunbeams and rain. Marble from all over the Mediterranean made it look snazzy, but the Roman concrete made the magic happen. Then we've got the impressive Hoover Dam in the USA, an architectural masterpiece. Experts designed it to harness hydroelectricity and prevent water from going where it shouldn't. This dam is built like a fortress. Steel, concrete, and a lot of TLC keep it strong. Let's jet off to New Delhi and check out the Akshardham Temple, even though it's very young compared to the other structures I've mentioned. It was completed in 2005. It already has the characteristics of a building that can stand for a long time. During the construction, numerous ancient and modern innovations were used to ensure its endurability. Next on our list of the world's most future-proof buildings is the St. Louis Arch, which rises high over Missouri. Also known as the Gateway Arch, it is the tallest human-made monument in the USA. The Great Wall of China. While it's not a single building, the Great Wall of China is an ancient marvel that has survived for centuries. Some sections of the wall were reconstructed in modern times, but they still carry historical and cultural significance. Those bricks might look a little crumbly, but hey, they're still standing strong. Then we have the former Byzantine church, now known as Hagia Sophia from Istanbul. It still looks glorious, and it's 1,500 years old. It's been through many things, like earthquakes. Architects designed Hagia Sophia in an impressively short period. After the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople in 1453, Mehmed II converted it into a mosque. He added some new stuff, like a minaret and a chandelier. Hagia Sophia is a unique architectural marvel. Its main dome is 105 feet tall and flanked by 2 semi-domes on both sides. In terms of its floor plan, the building is nearly square, but from the interior perspective, it appears rectangular because of the extension of the roof by large semi-domes. The interior has 3 aisles separated by columns, with galleries above and substantial marble piers rising at both ends to support the dome. These columns are constructed of the finest marble, carefully chosen for their color and variety, while the lower walls are adorned with marble slabs. On the outside, there are windows above the galleries and around the base of the dome. When the sun's shining, it kinda tricks your eyes into thinking the dome is floating, because these windows hide the support structures. We couldn't have put together a list of the world's sturdiest buildings without mentioning perhaps the most famously enduring of them all: the Pyramids of Giza. They were completed around 2540 BCE. They've got the whole package: superior materials, genius engineering, and a design that puts all other structures to shame. The ancient Egyptians were all about building for eternity. They believed that the afterlife would last forever, so they made sure their tombs would too. The Egyptians threw in extra walls and other stuff just to be safe, even if they didn't fully understand the laws of physics. Now, let's shift our gaze to our time. Can today's skyscrapers beat the pyramids in the longevity game? The Burj Khalifa in Dubai is the world's tallest building. It boasts impressive engineering and architecture. Its reinforced concrete and steel structure, along with its iconic design, might help it withstand the test of time. Sure, skyscrapers are super tall and fancy, but they're not as sturdy as the pyramids. Modern skyscrapers need to deal with crazy winds, lightning strikes, and earthquakes too. Experts haven't agreed on this yet. Some say that if we take good care of them, they can last. But others think they'll eventually be torn down or abandoned. The verdict? Only time will tell. Alexander Rose and his team are up to something jaw-dropping. They're creating a 10,000-year clock in the Texan desert. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's take a trip to Japan. There, they have this fantastic tradition of rebuilding the Jingu Shrine with wood and thatch every 20 years for more than 13 centuries. It's to preserve the structures and pass on the craftsmanship to the next generation. But let's not stop there. Ancient artifacts and buildings from various cultures have survived the test of time, and each one has something to teach us. The Clock Project takes inspiration from these long-lasting wonders and aims to encourage us to think about our long-term future. Building a clock to last 10,000 years is no easy feat. The team must consider materials, location, and past examples of long-lasting structures. For instance, some of history's unique treasures survived simply because they were lost and found later. Going underground is another way to protect artifacts. Subterranean environments shield items from the elements and keep temperatures stable. But there's one pesky problem: water. It's always trying to sneak its way in. Materials matter big time when it comes to longevity. You see, everything ages because of oxidation, which means rusting. So, finding materials that can withstand thousands of years is vital. How long buildings can really last depends on the building's personality and purpose. Take those fancy office buildings, for instance. They're all about short-term commitment, designed to last only 30 to 50 years. Just like with any relationship, it takes effort to make something last longer. Regular checkups, maintenance, and repairs are the key to keeping the spark alive.
To energize this amazing venue, which comes with a hefty price tag of around $2.3 billion, you'll need 28 megawatts of power, enough to supply electricity to about 21,000 homes. It was originally projected to cost just $1.2 billion, but challenges arose and the budget ballooned. I'm talking about the Sphere in Las Vegas. This place is so massive, it could fit the entire Statue of Liberty from its base to its torch. Standing at 366 feet tall and stretching 516 feet wide at its largest point, it can accommodate up to 20,000 people if they're all standing. If you want to sit down, The capacity drops to 18,600. Still, that's enough room for the entire population of some small nations, like Palau. Now, let's dive into its construction. To kick things off, you need land, and the sands provided the site. They dug out 110,000 cubic yards of dirt and rock to get things rolling. Just to put that into perspective, a cubic yard of loose, dry topsoil weighs around 2,100 pounds. If it's wet, that weight can shoot up to about 3,000 pounds. In total, they excavated the weight equivalent of 3,500 adult male megalodons. If we're talking dry soil, of course. The external sphere is 30% taller than the inner dome. Building the dome's roof took 3,000 tons of steel, which included 32 hefty trusses, each weighing 100 tons. Altogether, the dome weighs around 13,000 tons and covers a surface area of 220,000 square feet. When the construction team reached the halfway mark with the dome trusses, they had to shift the crane to the southern end of the site to finish the remaining trusses. That move alone took 2 days. It's no surprise considering the crane used is the fourth largest crawler crane in the world. Transporting it from Belgium was hard. First, it was shipped to California. Then, 120 tractor-trailers took it to Las Vegas. Another 18 days were needed to set it up using a secondary crane. The Gateway Arch is an impressive 630-foot monument situated in St. Louis, Missouri, with a base that matches its height. It's just as wide as it is tall. Made of stainless steel, this cool curved arch is not only the tallest of its kind, but also the tallest building in Missouri. Some say it's even the tallest human-made structure in the Western Hemisphere. It was built to celebrate the westward expansion of the U.S. and is officially dedicated to the American people. You'll find it in Gateway Arch National Park, which, fun fact, is actually the smallest national park in the U.S. It doesn't even feature a natural area. The arch was designed by a Finnish-American architect who won the design competition for design concept in the 40s. However, it took some time for construction to begin. The whole building process started in 1963 and it was wrapped up in 1965. It cost the U.S. Treasury around $13 million. You may say, hey, it's nothing compared to the sphere you mentioned previously. Yeah, but back in the 60s, $13 million could buy you what $96 million can buy you today. But still, the arch is way cheaper than the sphere. The construction bidding was pushed from the 20th December 1961 to the 22nd of January 1962, with around 50 companies interested, and the winning bid signed on the 14th of March 1962, backed by a $2.5 million city subsidy. McDonald, not McDonald's, Construction, the company in charge of the project, built a cool 30-foot viewing tower for crowds to check out their epic project. In 1963, about 1 million people showed up to take a look at the project in progress. Initially scheduled for completion in 1964, the arch was only revealed to the public in 1967. Stan Wolf, the project manager at McDonald Construction Company, mentioned that constructing a 62-story building is simpler than building an arch. He explained that with a building, it's all about stacking things straight up. With an arch, you're dealing with a lot of curves. Now, this building has set a bunch of world records. The tallest existing structure, the tallest building ever, the building with the most floors. This iconic tower is the centerpiece of a massive mixed-use development featuring 30,000 homes, 9 hotels, 7.4 acres of park, 19 residential skyscrapers, the vast Dubai Mall, and an artificial lake, essentially a mini-city. Designed to attract global attention and investment, the Sheikh aimed for the extraordinary. Ever felt a chill in the air while flying? At the top of the Burj Khalifa, it might feel a bit like you're on a plane, with temperatures about 11 degrees cooler than at ground level. The building's spire, made of over 4,000 tons of steel, stands at 660 feet tall, although it's mainly for looks, as the building would still be an impressive 1,919 feet without it. The exterior consists of reflective glass panels and aluminum, designed to handle the fierce desert sun and wind while providing great thermal performance. Those glass panels are no joke. Each weighs about 800 pounds. The building is equipped with 57 elevators, including the world's fastest double-deck variety, zipping passengers up and down at speeds of up to 33 feet per second. But if you're up to some cardio, there are 2,909 stairs leading to the 160th floor. No thanks, after you. Given how tall the Burj Khalifa is, you may mistakenly think water might be an issue. I mean, it's obviously hard to pump it up there, but it's not. Burj Khalifa's system delivers around 250,000 gallons of water daily through many miles of pipes. The temperature regulation isn't a problem either, as the air conditioning system is so powerful that its effect is comparable to melting 13,000 tons of ice in a day. Right. And what about cleaning those windows? There's a 36-worker crew to take care of all 24,348 windows. Want to guess how much time it takes? Not a week, not a fortnight, not even a month. It takes around 3 months. And this task is performed 4 times a year. 3 by 4 gives us 12, so yeah, it's pretty much a non-stop process. Elizabeth Tower is one of the greatest and most iconic constructions of all time. Don't tell me it's the first time you've heard about it. It's just another name for Big Ben. One of the main secrets of this tower is its foundation, which is crucial to its stability. The tower's base is square, and it measures 40 feet on each side. For such a tremendous construction, a stable foundation is crucial, so Big Ben's construction foundation is 12 feet thick. Still, it's not the foundation it's famous for, but the clock. How do we care for something this high up? For the past 150 years, reaching the top of the clock tower has meant tackling a spiral staircase with precisely 334 steps. There is a spiral staircase with 290 stone steps up to the clock room, followed by 44 to reach the belfry, which gives us those 334 steps I mentioned before, and an additional 59 to the top of the spire. They're currently adding elevator shafts, but don't get too excited. They're mainly for maintenance and security and won't be for regular use. So once you reach the top, there's a door that opens to a narrow walkway behind each of the 4 clock faces. It's a tight fit, just spacious enough for an average person. If you venture a bit further on the stairs, you'll find another door leading to the clock room, which holds the impressive clock mechanism. Now, the clock mechanism is an engineering wonder all on its own, featuring a clever system of weights, gears, and a pendulum that keeps time. The pendulum, measuring 14 feet, plays a vital role in ensuring the clock's precision. As they say, England swings like the pendulum do. Shenzhen, China. At first sight, it doesn't look like a perfect place to build one of the fanciest and tallest buildings in the world, but a company from China decided to take a chance. They had visions of building Golden Finance 117, a unique, mighty skyscraper with plenty of things super rich people could enjoy. At that time, no one knew it would turn into one of the tallest ghost scrapers in the world, meaning it would be a skyscraper with no life, events, or people inside. The one that no one would even talk about anymore. The world has impressive tall skyscrapers. The first one was built in 1885 in Chicago. And the tallest one today is in Dubai. Then there's one in Shanghai, another one in Mecca, and Shenzhen. Golden Finance 117 was supposed to be the 5th tallest skyscraper ever built. The construction was started 13 years ago, and at first, it all looked very promising. In 2015, the building reached its full height, 1,955 feet. But then, something mysterious happened. People deserted the skyscraper shortly after it was almost done, and the whole project has remained unfinished to this day. The company got the idea in 2008. During that period, plenty of cities across China were trying to build something impressive to get their place on the world stage. Golden Finance 117 was supposed to be a commercial and residential tower for very rich people. Italian and French-style interior design, a polo club, extensive gardens. The skyscraper was supposed to have a 3-story diamond-shaped atrium at the top, with a swimming pool, sky bar, and a restaurant. And don't forget about the highest observation deck in the world, a paradise for those who could afford it. Imagine living at the top of such a skyscraper. Golden Finance 117 was expected to be habitable up to its highest point. This mixed-use skyscraper was supposed to rise 128 floors above the ground. There was a plan to turn 117 of them into commercial space and hotel, and 11 more floors were expected to be for operational and mechanical services. The building's ratio of height to width was 9.5 to 1. When you have such a high and thin tower, you have to be careful with such forces as strong winds. But the skyscraper was designed to resist all this. No wonder, with a perimeter frame of mega braces, huge tapering columns, and transfer trusses. On the surface, it all looked well, an excellent design and unique construction. But before the company started pre-sales, authorities needed to inspect and sign off on the final product. This is a process all new developers need to go through if they want to get and keep their spot on the property market. The country wants only established and reliable companies to keep the quality levels high. Back in the day, the company that was building the skyscraper was a new player in the Chinese market, so they had to finance their project all by themselves. They couldn't start recouping their investment until each of their buildings was finished. In other words, it was tricky ever since the beginning. But they were focused on the result. If they managed to finish the entire project with no major issues, the reward would be amazing. So they started in August 2008. China survived the global financial crisis that also happened in 2008, but it still affected the market. That brought lots of pressure on the company, which is why they stopped building the skyscraper in January 2010. Things got better in 2011. That's when the company decided to continue their work, finish the tower, and get ready to sell it because the market was growing once again. But considering all the rules on the property market, the company was in a very vulnerable situation. Things were getting more and more complicated. In 2015, there was a new crisis, this time affecting the stock market. The series of unfortunate events kept happening on and off until everyone stopped talking about the entire project. One more issue was the location. The skyscraper was being built on what used to be industrial land, and in the area, there weren't many wealthy people who could afford to live in such a building. The company probably hoped for people to relocate there once they finished the construction, which never happened. China generally has the biggest number of tall buildings in the whole world. There are 1,400 skyscrapers in the country. The US takes second place with more than 800 high-rise buildings. Then there's Japan with over 250 skyscrapers. 2018 was the year when China built more skyscrapers than any other country in the world. 88 new buildings with a height of 656 feet or more appeared there. But because of multiple unforeseen events, Golden Finance 117 never got its chance to shine. Now it's just a ghost place everyone stopped talking about in 2018. Now, this wasn't the only case when a building remained unfinished for a long period of time. A new airport in Berlin, Germany was meant to open in June 2012. It wasn't the first project like this to miss the deadline, but it was one of the most memorable. The airport was about to open, but right before it did, inspectors found around 120,000 defects all over the place. For example, some automatic doors didn't open. There were fire safety issues. Authorities also noticed sagging roofs. About 106,000 miles of cable were wired in the wrong way, which means they couldn't turn on some lights or turn off others. Experts were trying to solve these problems for 9 years. The airport was built to handle 27 million passengers a year. In 2019, over 45 million travelers passed through the two other overburdened airports in Berlin. These airports are now set to close and merge with the new one, which has started expanding. The original budget for the whole project was more than $8.2 billion. but it's likely to increase in the next few years. The idea occurred back in 1990, and it took 6 years just to find the right spot to build the airport. The official construction didn't start for another decade. The original code for this airport also needed to be changed since it was already in use by an airport in India. But if you design an airport in the early 2000s, will it even be compatible with the travel habits and technology in 2020 and beyond? Also, there isn't enough space for all the planes that are supposed to be there. And still, since 2020, the airport has been open and growing bigger. Meanwhile, a tower in Krakow, Poland, got the nickname Skeleton. It stood proud and tall, but its unfinished carcass indeed looked like a skeleton. At 300 feet, it's one of the tallest buildings in Krakow. The project started in 1975, but stopped because of some difficulties in the country that occurred at that time. The tower remained abandoned for a long time and changed owners several times. It was often wrapped in advertising billboards. Luckily, it didn't remain unfinished. In 2016, the latest reconstruction process started. The main goal was to turn the skyscraper into a modern office building. It's completed now. The tower consists of 5 office buildings, together with the main one in the center. Architects found inspiration in styles from the 1920s and 30s. There's a terrace at the top. In the future, a museum of the history of the building might appear in the skyscraper. And here's one more ghost tower, this time in Bangkok, Thailand. From the outside, you'd say it's just another part of Bangkok's skyline. The skyscraper is around 75% completed. But once you take a closer look, you'll see there are plenty of interior structures missing. It was supposed to be a luxury building, but right now it's just another abandoned skyscraper. It's surrounded by a fence and doesn't look safe. The walls are covered with graffiti and there's no electricity. The building stands there as a reminder of what it could have become and draws the attention of urban explorers from all over the world. The construction process stopped when the crisis started, and now only occasional adventurists visit the site to enjoy the magnificent view of the city and the river. Well, this eerie Lake Huron discovery may be that it possibly contains the remnants of an entire civilization. Whoa, wait, sounds like Atlantis, right? Well, not exactly. But if there really had been an ancient underwater civilization here, it must have been a pretty advanced one. Around 10,000 years ago, 2 sharp glassy flakes broke off a stone tool and landed on the ground unnoticed. They stayed buried there for thousands of years, until 2013. Then scientists pulled up a small chunk of mud, about the size of a milk carton, from the bottom of Lake Huron, 100 feet underwater. Inside the mud, they found those same 2 flakes made of obsidian, a shiny black volcanic glass that forms when lava cools quickly. After careful testing, they realized these flakes came from Central Oregon, which is quite a distance, about 2,500 miles away. They found this prehistoric Great Lakes site on the Alpena Amberley Ridge, an underwater landform that once connected what's now Michigan and Ontario. Back then, it was dry land. Early humans used it to build traps for animals like caribou as the Ice Age faded and the Great Lakes began to form. Now, obsidian was the high-tech material of ancient times. It's super sharp and perfect for making tools. If you study the flakes carefully, it's obvious that humans made them. You can see where they struck them and the feathered edges that come from being carefully chipped. That means people were not only crafting tools here, but they also had access to obsidian that came from incredibly far away. It was likely possible through a huge trade network that spanned across the continent. For over 100 years, people have guessed that ancient societies might have existed beneath the Great Lakes, but no one had proof. That's why work on this submerged archaeological site is so important. A team of researchers has been trying to learn more about the 10,000-year-old ruins and the civilization that left them behind for over a decade now. Lake Huron's icy water acted like a time capsule that helped preserve things for thousands of years. So far, researchers have found not only unique stone tools, but also ancient trees with roots still intact and underwater peat bogs that preserved seeds and leaves. It was like an Ice Age version of Pompeii, a scene frozen in time. These discoveries are also helping scientists create new technologies and ways to do underwater archaeology. They've engaged sonars, underwater robots, and divers so far. Now, it's pretty cool that the tools they found on the Alpina Amberley Ridge were way smaller than other tools from the same era found nearby. That might mean a different group of people lived here, and they had their own unique way of life. Even the peat bogs they found, which are about 9,500 years old, hold secrets. They're full of pine needles, seeds, and leaves that could reveal what the environment was like back then. Usually stuff like this breaks down quickly on land, but the cold freshwater preserved it. The Michigan team is working with scientists in Cambridge, England, to extract DNA from the remains. If it works, it could finally confirm what animals lived there, and maybe even more. There are still years of discovery on this prehistoric Great Lakes site ahead. Another famous submerged archaeological site is the lost city of Pavlo-Petri. Archaeologists think it is the oldest sunken city in the world they've found and made official so far. Pavlo-Petri is around 5,000 years old. That means it existed even before the legendary Greek heroes in Homer's stories. Scientists first spotted it way back in 1904, and then mostly forgot about it until 1967, when Nicholas Fleming rediscovered it. He described it as a Bronze Age city now lying under about 10 to 13 feet of water. A year later, he returned with a team of scientists to study the ruins. Over 6 weeks, using just hand tapes and a basic grid, they managed to map out the city. They found that it covered almost 1,000 feet by 500 feet and had at least 15 buildings, courtyards, 5 streets, 2 tombs, and around 37 small stone graves. They also found signs that the ruins continued onto the nearby island of Pavlo-Petri itself. They dug up some amazing pottery, obsidian, and chert blades, and even a tiny bronze figurine that may date all the way back to 2800 BCE. Most of the buildings, though, came from the period between 1650 and 1180 BCE. Then scientists left the site alone again until 2009, when a super team of researchers launched a new 5-year project to really dive deep into the history of Pavlo-Petri. This time, they had digital mapping tools and better diving equipment, so they could explore and even excavate underwater. They found another 97,000 square feet of buildings, including a large hall and hidden streets. Plus, they dug up even more pottery that showed people had been living in the city from about 3000 BCE to 1100 BCE, and that the city once had a population of 500 to 2,000 people. No one knows for sure how the city ended up underwater, but many scientists think it was because of an earthquake, maybe around 1000 BCE, or even as late as 375 CE. Because it's the oldest underwater city ever found, some people even believe Pavlo-Petri might have inspired the legend of Atlantis. Another contestant for the Atlantis title lies near Japan. Back in 1986, a local diver was exploring the waters near the Ryukyu Islands when he found a giant structure made of perfectly shaped steps and sharp edges. It was 82 feet underwater. Today, the Yonaguni Monument is one of the most mysterious underwater sites on the planet. The structure is nearly half a football field in size. It looks like a massive stone pyramid with layers of platforms and steps stacked one on top of another. No one really knows where it came from or who built it. Some experts think the monument might be more than 10,000 years old, which would make it older than the Egyptian pyramids. One theory is that it could be the last remains of a lost civilization called Mu, a mythical Pacific society kind of like Atlantis. Others believe an ancient culture that lived in Japan as early as 12,000 BCE might have built it. But many scientists and geologists are skeptical about this possible underwater ancient civilization, even though Yonaguni has narrow passageways, arched openings, and right angles that almost look like city blocks. They say that the site looks a lot like natural rock formations, like the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, for example. The whole monument is still connected to a bigger chunk of bedrock, which means it wasn't built piece by piece. And the way the layers of rock are stacked probably has more to do with earthquakes and tectonic movement. It's located in the very active Pacific Ring of Fire. One marine geologist kept going back down there, and every time he found something new. He says he spotted tool marks in the rock, symbols carved into stone faces, and even rock formations shaped like animals. He believes these carvings point to a culture that came from mainland Asia. He said he had identified 10 different structures off Yonaguni, including a ruined castle, a triumphal arch, 5 temples, and even a huge museum. These buildings seem to be connected by roads and channels, and some parts are surrounded by what could be giant stone walls. The explorer believes the city is at least 5,000 years old, based on stalactites found in underwater caves nearby, which would have only formed after the caves flooded. His supporters say they have never seen an earthquake create shapes like this, above or below water. But skeptics blame it all on erosion and insist that whirling underwater currents and sea creatures left holes in the rock. Now, if you want to form your own opinion about it, the spot is open for visitors, and it's definitely a super fun diving experience. The lost city of Atlantis may have actually been found. No, really. 2 researchers were working in the waters off the coast of Cuba when they discovered the ruins of what looked like an ancient submerged city. That happened about 20 years ago, and yet no one really talks about it today. It's like the authorities just took the research, locked it away in some top-secret room, and decided no one else should know about it. But why? Well, I'm going to tell you. Back in 2001, Paulina Zalitsky, a marine engineer, and her husband, Paul Weinswig, were hired to explore the waters off Cuba's western coast. They had 2 main objectives: to search for old shipwrecks, possibly hiding treasures like gold and jewels, and to locate valuable oil and natural gas deposits deep underwater. They were using a sonar. Basically, this equipment is like a sound-based radar. It sends out sound waves underwater, and when those waves hit something, like a sunken ship, they bounce back. The system can figure out where and how far the object is just by listening to the echo. So, the couple was scanning the seafloor with this equipment more than 2,000 feet below the surface. And then, out of nowhere, they found something way more interesting than gold or oil. They found stones. Not just any stones. I'm talking huge, perfectly arranged stones. Kind of like a mini version of the pyramid at Chichen Itza. Or even better, like a bunch of tiny submerged Chichen Itzas. Yep, they saw that. Or at least, they think they did. The thing is, sonar doesn't work like a camera. It definitely doesn't record video or take actual pictures underwater. What it does do is create images using sound. And those images are usually just outlines or shapes, kind of like a blurry black and white sketch. It shows you where things are, but not exactly what they look like. And that's exactly what happened back then. The equipment started producing images of these perfectly organized stone structures, and it really looked like some kind of urban development. I mean, the site was just too organized, too symmetrical to be just random rocks. But it sounded too good to be true. I mean, this discovery could totally change everything we know about ancient civilizations on the American continent. So the scientists decided it would be too irresponsible to announce anything without finding more evidence first. And that's why they decided to go back to that same spot. This time they sent down an underwater remotely operated vehicle to actually see what was going on beneath the sea. See? This robot was basically an underwater cameraman. And yep, it confirmed it. There was definitely something strange down there. It looked like an ancient city made of huge, smooth blocks of granite. These rocks were about 8 feet by 10 feet. Some were in pyramid shapes, others were circular. Some seemed to be deliberately cut and then stacked on top of each other, while others appeared isolated from the rest. Together, they looked like they were forming corridors and outlines of rooms. It was like finding large buildings in the middle of an underwater desert. These images were enough for Zalitsky to seal the deal. Back then, she confirmed that this amazing structure, her words, could have been a large urban center. Again, her words. Then the couple started to speculate. They said that these structures were probably built more than 6,000 years ago, which would make them older than the Great Pyramids of Egypt. It's even older than the famous Maya, the civilization that used to live in the Americas and is known for their ancient and advanced temples. The research also suggested that these structures might belong to a civilization that lived on the American continent thousands of years ago, and that we didn't even know about. This supposed civilization once thrived on a 100-mile land bridge connecting Cuba to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. But then, something catastrophic happened. According to their theory, the Earth's faults shifted beneath the surface, leading to a massive earthquake. Then, in the blink of an eye, the entire bridge was destroyed. The land was swallowed up by the sea and ended up at the bottom of the ocean, and this civilization disappeared. Of course, all the connections to the famous Atlantis myth got the media totally hooked on the story. News websites ran headlines like "Lost City of the Caribbean Found" and "Atlantis Found in Cuba." So, could that really be Atlantis? I mean, did they finally find the remains of this supposedly super advanced and lost civilization? Well, it's hard to say. From the start, part of the scientific community wasn't buying into the story too much. First, there's the issue of the date. Saying that this civilization existed at this spot at least 6,000 years ago just wasn't very credible. Then, some European archaeologists argued that the stones they found using sonar might just be natural limestone, not perfectly sculpted granite. And third, it was too deep. Even with the whole theory of earth faults opening up and swallowing everything, it's still hard to explain how an entire city ended up so deep in the ocean. For comparison, there is Heraklion, a real ancient Egyptian port city that got submerged. Today, it is only about 19 feet underwater. But this so-called Atlantis city is at depths between 2,000 and 2,460 feet. See how that's totally different, right? People think it would have taken around 50,000 years for such stone structures to sink to the depth where they are said to be found. And according to experts, none of the known civilizations from that long ago had the ability to build such structures. But for Zalitsky, yes, it was possible. She still believed in the fault theory to explain how this land ended up at the bottom of the ocean so fast. Big movements of the Earth's tectonic plates are usually followed by things like volcanoes and earthquakes. So, according to her, it's a powerful event, and the island sinking could have happened really quickly. This earthquake theory could also explain why some of the megaliths on the seafloor look organized while others don't. But to really prove any of this, they needed a specially designed robot to go down there again and take samples of the rocks and sediment. That way, they could figure out how old the rocks were and maybe even find signs of human life, like carvings, sculptures, or artifacts. The problem is, drilling into those structures isn't easy. They look like granite, and drilling granite that deep underwater is seriously tough. And more than anything, they needed money to do it, a lot of it. So maybe they just never got the funding. Because even with all that initial hype, no further explorations or studies were ever reported. And that lack of follow-up sparked a lot of speculation. Some people even wondered if the story got shut down on purpose, like maybe the authorities wanted to keep something top secret. As if this underwater city was built by some kind of higher extraterrestrial being, and they just don't want us to find out. But truth be told, the strongest argument for saying, yeah, that is definitely a lost city, is that nature supposedly couldn't have built something so symmetrical. Geologists did try to find natural explanations, or at least similar examples from other parts of the world, but they came up short. Still, just because we haven't found a clear natural explanation doesn't mean there isn't one. Nature can create some pretty wild and unexpected stuff, so honestly, that whole too perfect to be natural angle is kind of a weak argument. What most likely happened is that experts just weren't convinced it was actually a sunken city, and that's probably why no one followed up on their work. Over time, the buzz faded, the story disappeared, and the site slipped back into silence. And without more data, the true nature of those underwater formations off Cuba's coast is still a mystery. question for you. Do you think Atlantis could be real? It remains as one of history's greatest mysteries. The legend began with Plato all the way back in ancient Greece, the tale of a civilization that formed and prospered before our own. Atlantis was supposedly a highly technological society, much like the Mayans. But, as the legend says, due to the people's greed, they were punished by a flood that destroyed and submerged their cities. Different theories try to guess Atlantis' location. Some say it was in the Mediterranean Sea. Some say it's beneath the Bermuda Triangle. But, as science has shown us, Atlantis may be only an allegory for humankind. Today, you'll discover several amazing underwater cities that you have never heard of. They existed indeed and are not just a myth. We're taking you on an excursion to the underwater city of Baia, which is on the coast of Italy. Known as the Las Vegas of the Roman Empire, Baia was a resort city. The Roman elite traveled there for recreation. Imagine an open-air spa. That was Baia. You can visit the submerged town by scuba diving and get close to that perfectly preserved, magnificent Roman sculpture, a true underwater wonder. You can spot the crumbled temples and buildings through glass-bottom boats. This is a moss-covered museum in Claudio's Nymphaeum. To your left, you can see a collection of classical Greek statues. Swimming down the Via Herculeana, you'll arrive at Villa Aprotio. Villas are Italian-style houses, and here you can admire their original marble floors. Notice the black and white patterns and the astounding shapes they make. Next, you'll arrive at Portus Julius. Can you see the collapsing wall structures at the bottom of the seafloor? You'll see well-preserved columns and limestone floors. Behold the ruins of the thermal baths of Lacus. The remaining multicolored mosaics are something great to see. You'll see their orange, blue, and green tiles if you get close enough. At Pisoni's Villa Pila, you'll see 25 preserved Roman pillars. Notice the arches, the frescoes nearby, and the magnitude of this well-kept treasure. The city was located over natural volcanic vents, so there were hot springs to be used at will. People went there looking to have an excellent time. And when I say people, I mean some of the great Roman emperors we learn about in school: Nero, Cicero, Caesar. But around the 8th century, the city was sacked and the luxurious town was abandoned. Slowly, the water level rose and the city started to drown. You are on a summer vacation off the coast of Greece, 4 hours outside of Athens, in the Peloponnese Peninsula on Pavlo Petri. You dust off your snorkel and head for a free dive on a bright sunny day. Sometime into the dive, you start noticing patterns on the seabed. 13 feet below the surface, the outline of familiar objects starts to appear, one by one. As you continue swimming, what looks like the outline of an entire city emerges before your eyes. You wonder, how could water have taken the whole city? Rocks are perfectly aligned into what appears to be the foundation of a building. Nicholas Fleming, a British oceanographer on vacation in Greece, was the person that discovered Pavlo Petri. He was documenting the seafloor artifacts. The team found the site filled with pots, storage vessels, and tools. A quern stone, for instance, is a tool used for grinding grains and turning them into flour. Multiple amphoras, which were found then, indicate that this settlement dated back to the Bronze Age, 5,500 years ago, when people started living in towns. The settlement is believed to have lasted for over 2,400 years. Pavlo Petri is considered today the oldest submerged town yet found, and it's impressive that it wasn't a simple village. It was a vibrant port city with stone-built buildings, a marketplace, streets, and even squares. Let's continue our exploration and find secrets in other underwater cities. You are diving off the coast of the Ryukyu Islands. Pacific waters are far from smooth. There's a strong current pulling you into the deep sea. Suddenly, you see a huge structure thanks to the sunlight shining down on the seabed. At first, it looks like Machu Picchu's ruins across the globe in Peru. As you approach it, you slowly figure out its form. A pyramid-shaped structure, arches, staircases. It's something that could have easily been a palace or castle. Could this also be a sign of human activity? What you just saw is known today as the Yonaguni Monument. It also goes by the name of Japan's Atlantis. The entire monument is about the size of 5 football fields and the height of a 5-story building. Its most surprising feature is its expansive terraces that host large crowd gatherings. Explorers and scientists believe that Yonaguni dates back to 10,000 years ago. But whether it is a man-made structure or a natural formation is still under debate. For Japan's top marine geologist, Professor Masaki Kimura, Yonaguni is the heritage of a lost civilization. Kimura has dived into exploring the ruins over 100 times over the past 10 years. According to him, there are clear signs of human activity down there. The triangle pool, located on the monument's surface, is a triangle-shaped concave that is a historical symbol of water fountains in the region. There is also a giant turtle carved on the eastern side of the structure. And according to Kimura, turtles have an important cultural meaning. Several pieces of stone tools have been recovered from the site. Their estimated age dates back to 10,000 years ago. However, not all scientists are convinced of the same. For many, Yonaguni is the result of thousands of years of erosion. The fact that the monument is composed of one massive rock leads them to believe that it is not human-made. The defined edges and flat surfaces resemble a natural formation occurrence in Northern Ireland, known as Giant's Causeway. A series of interlocking basalt columns look like the ruins of a palace, but they were the result of volcanic activity in the region. Well, stay tuned for more underwater discoveries. The next stop on our voyage is one of today's most famous underwater cities that has turned into an underwater archaeological park. The city of Port Royal in Jamaica exists today only below the surface. But in 1692, it was one of the wealthiest cities in the Western Hemisphere. Port Royal was the center of the British Empire at the time, and an important trade city that attracted people from all over. It was also home to real-life pirates of the Caribbean. On the morning of June 7, 1692, the people of Port Royal met a different fate than they probably expected. The bars and restaurants beaming with life woke up shaking. People were taken out of bed with the power of a massive earthquake, estimated today at 7.5 on the Richter scale. One survivor says he saw the earth opening up and swallowing the town whole. What he said could be true, as the city was mainly built over sand. The ground sucked buildings, roads, and everyone above. Geysers erupted, and finally, waves as big as 10-story-high buildings hit the city. About 33 acres of the city disappeared underwater, and amazingly, most of its 17th century remains lie in good condition under 40 feet of water. In the ruins, archaeologists have found taverns, storage rooms, kitchens, and recreational buildings used for diverse purposes. You can see a grand lion statue, a submerged bridge, and many picturesque arches. Now, do you fancy a trip to India? Just outside its coast lies another sunken marvel. A site known as the Lost City of Cambay is located on the Gulf of a similar name. It remained hidden until 2001, when the National Institute of Ocean Technology did a routine water assessment. With sonar technology, which sends a wave of sound to the bottom of the sea, they found something far beneath the surface. Images showed well-defined geometric shapes spread along a 5-mile stretch. The remains found dated to more than 9,500 years ago, meaning that this civilization was lost at around the end of the Ice Age. Debris recovered from the site included construction material, pottery, beads, sculptures, and even bones. Scientists argue whether these artifacts are indeed from the site, but if they truly are, then the lost city of Cambay would be the oldest civilization in the world.
Before we get into the reason why and how there are pyramids all around the world, let's talk about some of the examples. I'll start with the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. These folks really knew how to build a city. Their well-planned urban center spanned over 7 square miles and boasted several pyramids. But the Pyramid of the Sun is the most impressive. This giant pyramid was built way back in 100 CE and is one of the biggest structures of its kind in the whole Western Hemisphere. It's so big that it's 216 feet high above the ground. If you ever find yourself in this ancient city, you won't be able to miss the Pyramid of the Sun. It's right there on the east side of the Avenue of the Dead, the city's main north-south street. To build this incredible pyramid, around 1 million cubic yards of material were used, including a special kind of red volcanic rock called hued tizontal. Impressive, huh? We don't know too much about the people who built the Pyramid of the Sun or its purpose. But archaeologists believe there was once a temple on top of it. When explorers went below the pyramid in the 1970s, they found a bunch of cool tunnels and chambers. In 2011, they even found a secret stash of clay pots, obsidian pieces, animal bones, human figurines, and a mask. Who knows what other secrets the pyramid is hiding? If you decide to see this one, you must climb the pyramid using the 248 uneven steps on the west side. Watch your step. Sudan got some pyramids too. Nubian pyramids aren't as big as the ones in Egypt, but they still got around 200 of them. These ancient pyramids have been home to the tombs of the pharaohs of the Meroitic Kingdom for almost 1,000 years, who ruled Egypt from Nubia to the Mediterranean Sea. The pyramids at Meroe were constructed using granite and reddish sandstone. Oh, and did you know that Sudan has more ancient pyramids than Egypt? The Kushite pyramids depict the indigenous architecture and burial traditions of Nubia's Napata and Meroe kingdoms, which ancient Egypt influenced. Meroe, the burial site of over 40 queens and kings, is the most extensive Nubian pyramid site. The tomb walls depict mummified royals bedecked in jewelry, their wooden caskets containing bows, quivers of arrows, and other artifacts pointing to the Meroitic relationship and trade with Egyptian and Greek civilizations. So if you're looking for some ancient tombs to explore, you may consider skipping the crowds in Egypt and heading on down to Sudan. Let's fly to Iraq to see some more pyramids. Ziggurats have fancy receding layers and tiered temples. Instead of a smooth exterior, it has tiers like a cake. Perfect for all the important work and rituals that went on inside. You can find these towering structures scattered throughout Iraq and Iran, and they're a real testament to the power and skills of the people who built them. One of the biggest and most impressive ziggurats is the ziggurat at Ur. It's basically a giant rectangular pyramid that stands a whopping 70 to 100 feet tall, with 3 levels of terraces and a temple on top. Can you imagine how many baked bricks it took to build that thing? Try 720,000 for just the lower portion. This particular ziggurat was built for Sumerian king Ur-Nammu. Similar to other ones, this pyramid has been around for thousands of years, so it got a little rough around the edges. Thankfully, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II and some archaeologists came to the rescue in the 6th and 20th centuries respectively, and now you can find this near Talil Air Base. The ziggurat at Ur was built in 2100 BCE by King Ur-Nammu for the moon deity Nana. It was the tallest building in the city, and you could see it from miles around. It was like the medieval cathedral spire of its day. People would come here to bring their agricultural surplus and get their food allotments and seek spiritual nourishment. Sadly, the Nana temple at the top of the ziggurat didn't survive, but we do have some blue glazed bricks that may have been part of its decoration. The lower parts of the ziggurat are pretty amazing though. The architects even included holes in the temple's baked exterior to let the water evaporate from its core. Since we explored some of the pyramids on our planet, let's take a broader perspective. They can be found in many parts of the world. Egypt has over 100 pyramids, double that number in Sudan, and dozens of others are scattered in the Middle East and China. The Americas have the most pyramids in total, with more pyramids than the rest of the world combined. These pyramids are located in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Time to know more about the evolution of pyramids through history. The oldest pyramid is in Egypt. This pyramid was a step pyramid, which was created by placing one layer of stone on top of another. The pharaoh Sneferu is credited with creating the pyramid shape we recognize today. During his 45-year reign, he built 3 pyramids. His first 2 attempts failed, but he finally got it right with the Red Pyramid, which is considered the first true pyramid. It was Sneferu's son, Khufu, who built the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was the tallest human-made structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years. Latin American pyramids are similar to early Egyptian step pyramids, but they were built independently, with no knowledge of each other. The pyramids in Sudan were built around 700 BCE and are tall but much narrower than those in Egypt. How in the world did all these civilizations build these things without even texting each other? After all, the Aztecs, Mayans, and ancient Egyptians were about as different as possible. But despite their cultural differences, they all seem to agree on one thing. Pyramids were pretty cool. Step pyramids are all around the world because they were the most feasible and stable way to build large and tall structures without access to lighter building materials like wood and metal. The triangular form with a square base is the best way to build a sturdy structure, and having a cube structure would require more material for less height. Now, when it comes to pyramid design, the Egyptian pyramids were like giant triangles with a square base, smooth sides, and a pointy top. On the other hand, the Aztecs and Mayans went for a tiered cake look, with steps leading up to a flat platform on top. So, while all these pyramids share the same basic shape, they have their own unique flair. Each group built its pyramids using different materials, techniques, and slope angles. So while they may have been inspired by each other's work occasionally, they were just doing their own thing. Egyptian pyramids had smooth, angled sides that were designed to help the pharaoh's soul ascend to heaven. The Pyramid of the Sun was built over a series of caves that served as a passageway for the deities. The Maya built the temple of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza to honor the deity Kukulkan, usually represented by a serpent. Nicknamed El Castillo, it has 91 steps on each side, plus a platform. That's 365 steps. One for each day of the Mayan calendar. Tell me, Brightsiders, how were pyramids built? To begin with, humans made them, not a foreign race from space that landed on Earth. You see, one thing that all pyramids have in common is that they were built without advanced tools or even the wheel. It took a lot of people to build them, including skilled laborers and architects. For example, it's estimated that 20,000 people built the Great Pyramid of Giza, and it's believed that most of them were skilled laborers. Building pyramids was a massive undertaking that required years of planning and effort. The Great Pyramid at Cholula, Mexico, took 600 years to complete.
Ah, the desert welcomes you with challenging conditions of abandoned environments and extreme temperatures. Hey, some of us would prefer dessert, chocolate over sand and rocks. Oh well, just like cactuses and camels, buildings have had to adapt to these conditions. Here are some examples of astonishing structures in deserts. These structures are called earthships. They're located in a New Mexico desert town. A large community of like-minded people lives in them. What's even more interesting is that the location of these buildings is registered as dumpsters. Maybe it's because all these structures are made out of old tires, bottles, and cans. Earthships operate using green building principles. About 40% of a typical earthship is built with natural or recycled materials. Imagine the walls made up of hundreds of used tires packed with dirt. Then there are layers of floor-to-ceiling passive solar windows. They gather the sunlight during winter and reflect it in the summer to keep the structures at a reasonable room temperature. You can see plants in corridors and glass bottles or aluminum cans stuffed inside walls. Certainly a distinct house in many ways. Mike Reynolds is an architect who noticed the alarming waste and consumption levels in the 1970s. He designed a fully sustainable home out of cans back then. Almost 40 years later, he becomes the one who brings together all the other Earthshippers. Reynolds drove a Mercedes, but it ran off of the vegetable oil he picked up at fast food restaurants in town. A standard 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom Earthship costs about $250,000 in this town. Yet there are Earthships like Dobson House that can cost as much as $1.5 million. If you do it yourself, with family and friends, you can eliminate the cost of labor, and it becomes relatively less expensive. Let's assume you're really going to build one. Where can it be? Well, anywhere. Earthships currently fit in the cold, dry air of Canada, as well as the hot and humid climate of Haiti. This is the Mirage Mirror House. It's an installation set in the Southern California desert. Mirage opened in 2017 as part of a contemporary art exhibition. It's composed of mirrors. This minimalistic structure blends with the environment around it. The doors, windows, and openings have been removed to create an amazing experience. What you have in the landscape is reflected back to you. How's it made? With mirrored surfaces. At night, the distant lights refract from the mirrors. In the daytime, the sky is transformed into banks of clouds. There's no fixed scenery in this house. How about seeing a futuristic structure in the deep desert? Architects designed a concept home that pairs perfectly with Elon Musk's Cybertruck. The house has a post-apocalyptic theme. I mean, when I say post-apocalyptic, it's because I can't say it. Anyway, the house is designed to survive in a disaster scenario. The Cyber House has steel gates, the windows are armored, and the exterior walls are made out of super strong material. Modern house is controlled by an autonomous geothermal heat pump. To put it in less sci-fi terms, you can keep the internal temperature steady. This sleek house has an entrance that can fit the Cybertruck. After all, it's inspired by it in the first place. Plus, the Cybertruck can be lifted to the second floor to be more secure. This is King Abdullah Petroleum Studies and Research Center in Saudi Arabia. Basically, it's a laboratory in a desert. It was designed to demand minimum energy. The architecture has patterns on the walls and ceilings, giving reference to the local tradition of geometric form. The next stop is Swartberg House in South Africa. This one is located near the Swartberg Mountains, but don't get too excited. It's on the edge of the Great Karoo Desert. It's a 4-bedroom apartment. It has a special temperature regulating system. The system works like a shield from the heat in the summer and as a sun trap in the winter. You're looking at the Grand Mosque of Djenné in Mali. This mosque is 52 feet tall. This is impressive because it's made of only sticks and a special mix of mud and other natural elements found in the desert. Petra is an ancient city hidden in the Jordan Desert. The structures are carved directly into red, white, and pink-colored sandstone cliff faces. It's located among the canyons and mountains near the desert. The place was a trade center many years ago. You might already see pictures of the impressive facade of the treasury. This structure still holds many mysteries in it. For starters, scientists can't explain how the Nabateans managed to create such a structure thousands of years ago. Did you know that there's another mysterious place in the middle of the desert that has a similar structure to Petra? Median Saleh was like a second capital of the Nabatean kingdom. Yet another secret they left for us to decipher. It has over 100 decorated tombs and more than 1,000 non-monumental graves. Plus, inscriptions and cave drawings are also here, again surrounded by sandstone. This wooden shack was a post office once. The structure is in the Tengger Desert of Mongolia. It's surrounded by nothing. Sand is the only thing that accompanies the lonely structure. The building is only 23 square inches. As you can guess, it didn't get too many visitors. It was abandoned for over 35 years. Its fate changed one day when a woman discovered the building. Mrs. Zhang and her friend came up with an idea. They were going to reach businesses and people who wanted to send letters and postcards from the world's loneliest post office without actually visiting the place. It worked. The post office rarely gets visitors in place, but it's busy online. Over 20,000 letters and postcards were sent from the Desert Post Office in December 2021 alone. The place is about 6 miles off the nearest road. A post truck picks the letters up and hits the road for delivery. Eventually, they are shipped all over the world. A second destination in Saudi Arabia is King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture. The building has an interesting design. It took nearly a decade to build this complex structure. It's a 321-foot-tall tower which stands out with its look. Stone Matters Pavilion is a stone structure in Palestine. The structure spans a surface area of 93 square inches. It has been built entirely out of 300 interlocking stones that mutually support each other. The concave roofs, and yes, they look like giant bowls, are designed that way to collect rainwater. The structure is in Iran. Interestingly, in Iran, the evaporation rate is 3 times faster than the world average, so this bowl-like design comes in very handy. It captures the water in a way that the water can form a single mass as a whole before it evaporates. The outer shell of the roof system collects rainwater, but it also works as an additional shading. It makes air move freely, designed like a cooling mechanism for both roofs. Eco Lodge in Egypt is the next stop. The project is built in a place that overlooks the desert and is constructed using locally available materials like sun-fired bricks and palm wood. The building is an example of traditional architecture. There's a water basin that lets in the air to keep the interior cool. A worthy mention is the CID Interpretation Center in Chile. Chile's Atacama Desert is among the top tourist destinations in the country. To help the tourists, architects designed a visitor center as part of the infrastructure for the wind farm. Here, the cold winter months don't freeze people because the large windows make the most of solar heating. What's even more interesting is that the building is designed to go completely dark at night. Imagine you somehow bumped into the building by accident. Black Desert House is a building respecting the stars. At night, this house goes completely dark. It dissolves into the night, so the stars can appear more prominent. Now, any mysterious desert buildings you know that aren't on this list? Let us know in the comments. Scientists have recently discovered Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages under a medieval castle in Italy. They followed a newly found 15th century sketch by the creator of the Mona Lisa and found one of the unexplored architectural wonders from the age of the Renaissance. Construction of the Sforza Castle started back in 1358, but it was destroyed about a century later during a local crisis. Then, in 1450, Francesco Sforza, the Duke of Milan, decided to rebuild it on the old ruins. After he passed away, his son Ludovico took over and kept improving the castle. He brought in some of the best artists of the time, including Leonardo da Vinci, to decorate its walls. We can still see Leonardo's frescoes today in the Room of Wooden Boards. While he was working at the castle, da Vinci also recorded some historical underground passages hidden beneath the outer wall. The drawing, dated between 1487 and 1490, was found at the Institut de France in Paris. The sketch is highly precise, and it proves that Leonardo was really interested in fortification design and was great at documenting existing structures. Historical records show that Ludovico ordered the building of an underground passageway that led straight to a basilica, where his wife was buried. Ludovico married Beatrice in 1491, and they had a happy but tragically short marriage, as Beatrice passed away while giving birth in 1497. The Duke locked himself away for weeks, grew a beard, and wore only black clothes while he was mourning his beloved wife. The secret tunnel may have stretched over a half a mile and would let Ludovico visit her grave in private. It could have served as an escape route if the castle was ever under siege. The existence of the tunnels remained one of the mysteries of the Renaissance for years, as no one knew for sure they were there. But now, scientists finally uncovered the secret history. They used a combination of ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning to build up an accurate 3D model of all the structures under the castle. They found the tunnels da Vinci alluded to in his drawings, and it looks like they may have only been a small part of a whole system of historical underground passages. The goal is to create a complete digital twin of the castle that will not only show all the preserved constructions, but also the ancient ones that are no longer visible. They also plan to add augmented reality to the virtual paths to let visitors discover Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages. Now, we don't know if the genius actually took part in constructing the hidden passages that scientists recently discovered, but we do know about some other Leonardo da Vinci inventions. He created the first satellite-like map in 1502. long before photography or satellites were even a concept. A famous figure in Italy, Cesare Borgia, invited Leonardo to a small town called Imola, near Bologna, to create a highly detailed map for him. Back then, maps were not very precise, as no one had figured out how to show exact distances on a smaller scale. Instead, people spent a lot of time decorating them with dragons, roses, fancy castles, mountain ranges, flowers, and other artistic details. These maps look more like beautiful paintings meant to be displayed, rather than practical tools for navigation. But Cesare Borgia wanted something truly functional, and Leonardo managed to create something revolutionary in the field of cartography. If you compare satellite images of Imola today with Leonardo's map, the similarities are striking. He captured every alley, curve of the streets, roadways, and even the exact sizes of the buildings. And he did it all by hand, using just a pencil, ruler, compass, and several of his own clever inventions. To gather all the necessary data, the genius walked through the streets for weeks using a large wheel that spun as he moved, recording the distance with a cable. Using the magnetic compass, he determined precise directions. He also developed a tool called the bussola, which measured angles inside a circle. With this, he could track the exact turns of each street and the size of the intersections. He figured out the distances between houses and major roads. Then, back at home, he used his notes and calculations to draw the map to scale with incredible precision. In his work, Da Vinci also used a technique developed by Florentine humanist Leon Battista Alberti. He created a mapping method where you could place an entire city inside a circle using polar coordinates. At the center of the city, 8 straight lines met, representing the main directions of a compass. Leonardo used this system to divide the town into 8 sections. He didn't overlook even the smallest buildings, which made his map one of the most advanced of its time. The Italian genius had a big dream to build a machine that could let people fly. He studied how birds, bats, and kites move through the air and designed a special flying machine. He believed that if he could copy their movements, humans might be able to soar like them. Da Vinci's design looked a lot like a bat, with 2 large pointed wings that stretched over 33 feet wide. He planned to build the frame from lightweight pine wood and cover it with raw silk to make it strong but not too heavy. The person flying it would lie on their stomach on a wooden board in the center. To make the wings flap, the pilot had to pedal a crank with their feet, which was connected to a system of rods and pulleys. There was also a hand crank for extra power and even a headpiece to help steer. As the person moved their hands and feet, the wings would flap and twist, just like a bird's. But there was one big problem. Humans aren't strong enough to make the machine lift off the ground. Even though it might have worked once in the air, there was no way for a person to get it flying on their own. Leonardo probably realized this, but his amazing idea still inspired flying machines that came centuries later. Da Vinci was way ahead of his time with many of his inventions, but his idea for a humanoid robot was especially futuristic. He was working under the patronage of the Sforza family, the one that had those ancient tunnels of Italy built. The genius designed a mechanical knight that could move its arms, turn its neck, and even open and close its mouth. Da Vinci had good knowledge of anatomy and the mechanics of body movements that helped him. His unusual creation used an external system of cables. A hand crank set it in motion, and there was also an internal gear-driven mechanism. About 450 years later, Da Vinci's detailed sketches of the robotic knight were rediscovered in the 1950s. Several researchers tried to recreate the robot from those sketches. In 2002, a roboticist who developed systems for NASA and Lockheed Martin took inspiration from the old notes and built a functioning model of Da Vinci's robotic knight. Another design Leonardo created for Duke Sforza was a special kind of bridge that could be taken apart and carried easily. It was made for defense forces who needed to cross rivers or moats while traveling. This bridge would swing across the water and land on the other side. It had wheels and used a rope and pulley system, so it could be set up quickly and packed away just as fast. To keep it steady, it even had a special weight to help balance it. Leonardo wrote in his notes that the bridge was light yet strong, and he designed several bridges like this for the Duke. One of his other designs was a bridge that could be built very quickly, and the defense forces would move across multiple rivers. As scientists continue to study Leonardo da Vinci's hidden passages, they reveal new chapters in human history. Who knows what other unexplored architectural structures they will find? That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.